Although Kamado Tanjiro knows that breathing method, in fact, he doesn't know what the breathing method is. The breathing method practiced by Kamado Tanjiro is also based on the practice in the God of Fire Kagura dance. Fire God Kagura dance is a Kagura dance passed down from generation to generation in the Kamado family. Essentially, breathing is controlled through dancing, a form of kokyu. Pursuing the essence of truth as the breath of the sun. The Fire God Kagami dance not only contains the breathing method, that is, the breathing of the sun. The 12 dance patterns it dances also include the 12 patterns of the sun's breath. In fact, the God of Fire Kagura dance does not only have 12 forms, but a total of 13 dance forms. But the 13th type, Kamado Tanjiro doesn't know. Sumyu, who can understand the plot of anime, knows. The 13th type is to completely link the first 12 types together, which is the so-called 13th type. He doesn't know any breathing method, including Kamado Tanjiro, so Kamado Tanjiro is explaining everything he knows to himself. Explaining the so-called breathing of the sun, as actually telling himself that he is dancing the God of Fire rhythm of self-breathing in Kagura dance. Just like him and Kamado Tanjiro, they don't have a professional teacher to teach them systematically, they can only use their own understanding. I remember that in the room, he watched Kamado Tanjiro dancing the God of Fire Kagura dance. The coherent dance pattern was so beautiful and breathtaking. At that moment, he also understood why. The reason why the Kamado family will inherit the God of Fire Kagura dance. Every form of the God of Fire Kagura dance is almost like dancing in an elf, a very beautiful dance form. On a rock on the top of the mountain, Makomo sat down, leaning on his small head with his small hands, and looked at the Mew, who was practicing the God of Fire Kagura dance in the open space in front of him. The girl's eyes were shining brightly. This dance is beautiful. To be honest, he was somewhat shy as a boy dancing in front of a girl like Makomo. But this doesn't affect his desire to practice the breath of the sun. It's just that, compared with humans, the body of ghosts is completely different. Ghosts have unlimited physical strength, super healing power and almost immortality. Moreover, the role of the breathing method is also to help people to have the physical strength equivalent to ghosts. As for ghosts, practicing the breathing method is to go one step further and further improve the abilities of ghosts. Keep trying to breathe. Feel the breath because human beings are different from ghosts. The road at the beginning was not smooth for Sumyu. But Sumyu didn't feel discouraged. After all, the abilities of ghosts themselves are already stronger than humans, so it will definitely be more difficult to make a breakthrough here. Try again and again. Failed again and again. Su-Emu's complexion was as usual, but there was unavoidable anxiety in her golden eyes. Makomo, who was sitting on the rock, couldn't help but said, "Breathe, adjust your breathing as much as possible. Apply breathing to the lungs and stimulate the blood." Sumyu looked back and looked really shut up. Makomo immediately shut his mouth. In fact, Makomo should not have said these things. No matter what, Makomo, as a disciple of Water Pillar, Yorokodaki Sakanji, shouldn't tell the ghosts any of these important information related to the Ghost Slayer squad. No matter how much Makomo trusts Sumyu, he shouldn't say it. After all, the breathing method is what the ghost killing team relies on most to hunt ghosts. Previously, Sumyu might have had the idea of breathing water from Makomo, but as she became more and more familiar with Makomo, this idea was gradually abandoned. What's more, now I got the breath of the sun. Trying again and again, failing again and again, even with Su-Emu's character, deep down in his heart, it is inevitable to become anxious. He can't be a machine, really emotionless. Only. I've been suppressing myself all the time. Calm. He silently told himself that he should almost miss something while practicing. What's wrong? Time passed slowly, the bright moon hanging high was slowly falling, the starry sky shining with stars also slowly faded, and the darkness that once surrounded the mountains seemed to be beginning to be illuminated by the sun. Unconsciously it's dawn. The sun will shine on the earth, and the energy from the sun will also bring warmth to the world. It's almost dawn. Makomo stood up suddenly, picked up the thick clothes and bamboo hats on the ground, and walked towards Sumyu. But was rejected by Sumyu. Sumyu waved her hand. Her golden eyes looked at the sun that was about to rise from the east. Bright, hated by ghosts, it is the nemesis of ghosts. Even though he, a ghost who is different from this world, still instinctively hates the sun. But at this moment, he vaguely understood something. Breath of the sun, it contains the energy of the sun, so the ghost itself will automatically reject it during practice. This is the limitation of ghosts. Just like, once the ghosts in this world are beheaded by Nichiren blades, they will die, but if the ghosts can break through this limit, even if they are beheaded by Nichiren blades, they will not die. And those who can do this, there are also in Demon Slayer, for example, 12 Kazuki's Black Death, in the anime Infinite City Decisive Battle, because of his strong obsession that he must not lose to others, he broke through the limit like Akaza and repaired his own neck wounds. Breaking through the limit of ghosts. So, what are his limits? He didn't know these all need him to find in the future. But at least, he knew, to overcome the feeling from the ghost nature. Ghosts hate the feeling of sunshine. If he hates sunlight instinctively, then the ghost instinct will also prevent him from practicing the breath of the sun, because breath of the sun contains the energy of breathing the sun. Open your hands to meet the sun, Mew, you are crazy, hurry up and hide. Seeing Su Emu's appearance, Mikomo was quite annoyed, and wanted to cover Su Mew regardless of whether Su Mew agreed or not. If you are exposed to sunlight, you will die. You idiot, idiot. While cursing, Mikomo began to spread his clothes in a panic, preparing to help Su Mew stop. The arrow of red cleansing. A calm voice came from Su Emu's mouth, and an invisible arrow shot out. Mikomo was pulled by an invisible arrow before, forcing him to a place far away from him. Asshole. Mikomo yelled angrily. You bastard. What are you doing? If you see the sun shining, you will die. Su Mew ignored it and just opened his arms. At this moment, the first ray of sunshine in heaven and earth rises from the east. On the top of the mountain, a ghost opened its arms and bathed in the sun. Mikomo was a little desperate. Tears flowed down drop by drop. The delicate little face is crying into tears. She thought that Mew was going to die, but suddenly felt empty. But until seeing the stupid Mew basking in the sun. Mikomo blinked, looking at the idiot basking in the sun. Feel like dreaming. What did I see? Saw a ghost bathed in sunlight. Doesn't it mean that ghosts will die as long as they see the sun? Mikomo felt that his head was in a daze. He was a ghost, wouldn't he die at the sight of light? Facing the sun and bathing in the sun, Su Mew only felt an indescribable discomfort all over her body, weakness, wanting to vomit, wanting to sleep, all kinds of difficult and negative states almost rushed in. Although, as a ghost, he would not die if he was bathed in sunlight, and sunlight would not be his fatal point, but the characteristics of ghosts still made him dislike sunlight. I really want to hide in the shadows, I really want to wear a black coat all over my body. But in the end he didn't. He gritted his teeth, forcibly endured the uncomfortable feeling in his heart, and forced himself to adapt. Time goes by. Little by little the sun rose higher and higher without knowing it. The ghosts in this world have long been hiding in the dark depths, but he is the only one who still welcomes the sun with open arms. The warm sunlight fell on Su Emu's skin, and with the warm sunlight, layers of fine blisters began to appear on the fair skin. It was the ghost's body that instinctively responded to the sunlight. Presumably similar to human allergies, ghosts are allergic to sunlight. There was an unstoppable itching all over his body, and the longer he bathed in the sun, the more intense this allergic feeling became. Taking a deep breath, Su Mew forcibly endured the discomfort, and began to dance on the top of the mountain. There are a total of 12 dance patterns in the God of Fire Kagura dance, and he did not know how many times he danced last night. But no matter how many times he jumped, it didn't seem to have much effect on him as a ghost. But now, dancing in the sun, he could clearly feel breathing, with the scorching heat of the sun entering his spleen and lungs domineeringly, burning and warming him. Is this the breath of the sun? In an instant, I realized something. He opened his eyes. Breathing was smooth at this moment, and the breath filled with sunlight filled his whole body. Breathing method is a general term for the skills developed by Guo Yuanyi for the human body. The main function is to strengthen the heart and lung function, so that the blood can absorb a large amount of oxygen in a short period of time. The ability of the body is greatly improved, and then it has the same physical ability as a ghost for a short time. The breath of the sun is the initial breath, the ancestor and foundation of all breathing methods. As the initial breath, it can emit the same energy as the sun, and has great lethality to ghosts. At the same time, energy can also be directly attached to the blade to form a burning crimson blade. Knife will destroy the ghost's internal organs after being pierced into the ghost's body, and the ghost's internal organs will be burned as if burned by a raging flame. The pain, and the body of the ghost gradually collapsed and could not be regenerated. The so-called breathing, chasing its essence, is made for people. It wasn't made for ghosts from the start. When the same energy from the breath of the sun, that comes from the sun enters the heart and lungs, and feels the pain burning in the heart, Su Mew probably already understood the matter. But it is precisely because this is the breathing that a ghost should master. When the breathing containing solar energy enters the ghost's heart and lungs, the powerful stimulation makes him instantly sense an extremely powerful force. While this kind of power has the destructive power to the ghost's body, it also greatly improves the ability of thinking. Hand press on the hilt. Close your eyes. In an instant, I realized something. The wind blows from the top of the mountain, and the hot sun shines down. The young man's eyes were vaguely thinking of the 12 dance patterns of the god of fire Kagura dance. Choke. The clear and crisp sound of sword chanting suddenly resounded through the clouds, and in an instant, hundreds of kilometers away, one could faintly feel that the sun in the sky and the earth suddenly became hot at this moment. Breath of the sun 1 shaped round dance. Breath of the sun 2 shaped Bilwotion. Breath of the sun 3 types sun red mirror. The breath of the sun the 4 shaped phantom sunbow. Breath of the sun Wuji train. Breath of the sunland shaped scorching sun. Breath of the sun 7 shaped Yangwatu. Breath of the sun hyphenation .8 type flywheel Kagero. Breath of the sun 9 shaped setting sun turning. The breath of the sun the dragon of the sun's halo head dance. The breath of the sun the dance of the 12 shapes. On the top of the mountain, all I could see was the Nichiren blades wielded by a boy with ghost horns. Accompanied by one after another of types, urging out, one after another of terrifying sword chi crisscrossed. The rocks began to collapse as the sword chi slashed past. Mikomo opened his mouth wide, staring blankly at this scene, looking at that stupid Mew, bathed in the sun, using the breathing method. What's even more frightening is that the breathing method actually contains destructive energy from the sun. The place where the Nichiren blades are waving, the flames are endless. At this moment, it is obviously the coldest moment in winter, but the surrounding temperature makes people feel suffocatingly hot. Hide nearby a basement hidden deep underground. The basement here is incomparably luxurious. A man in a black suit who had started to rest suddenly opened his eyes. A feeling of heart palpitations suddenly formed in my heart. That breath, familiar breath, just like hundreds of years ago, that person cut him with a sword like the sun. Ji Guoyuanyi, that person, even now, still feels fear. Damn undead. Why are they all dead? It still makes me so uneasy. Kibutsuji Muzan gritted his teeth, and there was unspeakable hatred in his scarlet eyes. On the top of the mountain, the snow that was once covered had already begun to melt at this moment, and the water began to flow. In the end, the ice layer accumulated on the top of the mountain gushed down like a torrent. On the top of the mountain, the flames were scorching hot. Every sword that Su Mu swung cut down, the flames were scorching hot, and there was no corrective action. And in the same way, the clothes on Su Mu's body were all burnt clean with the terrifying temperature. This idiot. Mikomo looked at this scene with a blushing face. Mu was definitely intentional, it's too hateful. She wanted to turn her head away, but she was really worried about Su Mu in her heart. After all, it can be clearly seen that the state of the body is wrong. But at this moment, Su Mu has stopped moving, staring at the rising sun, whispering softly. The breath of the sun, the shape of the 3. The next moment, the round dance, the blue sky, the scorching sun in the red mirror. The 12 shapes from the breath of the sun, release, and thus constitute a cycle, starting to continue. At this moment, Su Mu's body was burning with flames. Like Vulcan. The flames flowed endlessly. Everything you see, feel, touch, and touch is like a blazing sun. This is the most direct softness that can be felt by people who have been forced by the hot temperature to watch from a long distance away. Feeling the hot breath from the heart and lungs, it is constantly burning, and the ghost's powerful recovery ability is constantly being repaired. Burning and repairing seem to have reached a balance point in the body. The body will not be completely destroyed by the powerful damage brought by the breath of the sun. At the same time, it also possesses the domineering power of the breath of the sun, which is as hot as a scorching sun. It can be said that with the breath of the sun, his strength is almost 10 times stronger than his previous self. In terms of pure destructive power, it even exceeded 10 times. In particular, the unique destructive power of breath of the sun against ghosts makes him more handy when dealing with ghosts. As this breath of the sun, Su Mu couldn't help murmuring, carefully experiencing the feeling just now. The girl uttered angrily and shyly. Thinking back to reality, Su Mu turned her head and looked at Mikomo, who was hiding far away. At this moment, Mikomo turned his back to himself, and hardly dared to look in his direction. Through the back facing him, he could see the small and white ears hidden in the black hair. It can be seen that the girl's ears are red. What's wrong with Mikomo? He tilted his head, a little confused about Mikomo's state at the moment, as if seeing something embarrassing, he felt very shy. What are you looking at? Put on your clothes quickly. Mikomo felt the gaze of the ghost from behind, and kicked his feet angrily. Where is there such a thing? Doesn't treat Mikomo as a girl. Su Mu was taken aback, and with the wind blowing from the top of the mountain, she suddenly felt. It's chilly all over. Look down. He hurriedly covered it with his hands. Even if he is as thick-skinned as him, he still blushes in the old face. The current self, without an inch of hair, is really too embarrassing. When he thought of dancing the God of Fire Kagura dance on the top of the mountain just now, he felt his face burn. Fortunately, there was no one around, otherwise, he felt that he really wanted to find a hole in the ground, and he got into it by himself. But it seems that there is no one, isn't Mikomo one? She won't watch the whole thing, right? The golden eyes couldn't help looking at Mikomo. The girl's slim back was behind her, and her white and tender hands were tightly clutching the hem of her dress. Looking at Mikomo's state, even if I didn't watch the whole process, I'm afraid. Although she has a thick skin, Su Mu still blushes a little. What are you still doing in a daze? Get dressed quickly. Not feeling the movement behind him, Mikomo stomped his feet angrily. Really disgusting. In the world, where is there such a thick-skinned ghost as Mu? When I think of what I have seen before, I feel my face is hot. I'm out of clothes. Su Mu is also wanting to cry at the moment. I was too involved in practicing the breath of the sun before, and the ghost's body is domineering, resulting in the power of the breath of the sun being too domineering, and the clothes on the owner's body were burned. Give you. Put it on soon. What a shame. Mikomo stomped on the ground with her little feet angrily. Su Mu hastily took the clothes that Mikomo still brought over, and put them on quickly. Because he was a ghost, his skin looked pale. At this moment, because he felt ashamed, his whole face turned red. Like a familiar, the prawns were average. Alright. After getting dressed, Su Mu said to Mikomo, who was still facing away from her. Mikomo waited for a long time before turning around. Her little face was still flushed like a small apple. However, Mikomo was obviously stunned when he saw the red-faced Mu with boiled prawns. Are ghosts still shy? Mikomo couldn't help murmuring. Slap. The little head was hit hard by Mu, and Mikomo raised his head a little annoyed. Why did you hit me? Why can't I hit me? Why didn't you remind me before? He glared angrily at Mikomo, this nasty little girl, watching Lao Su dancing the God of Fire Kagura dance on the top of the mountain naked. Do you want to see him make a fool of himself? Fortunately, there was no one nearby, otherwise, he felt that he was going to be humiliated and killed by his coquettish operation. Mikomo blinked blankly, and said in a daze, Ghost, are you still afraid of being seen? Su Mu was taken aback. Many of the ghosts he and Mikomo met before were dressed in tatters, and many of them were even naked. It's just that those ghosts are very ugly, and they just wanted to solve each other, and didn't care about this aspect. It seems that some ghosts don't seem to care much about their appearance. Of course, except for some female ghosts. In the world of Demon Slayer, there are still female ghosts who are particularly concerned about their appearance. Why am I afraid of being seen? Su Mu looked down at Mikomo with her hands on her back. The strong pressure from the ghost made Mikomo lower his head. You were so engrossed in the practice just now, I didn't dare not disturb you. And you dance so beautifully, I didn't expect it for a moment. Do I dance so well? Su Mu stared at Mikomo with gritted teeth. Mikomo felt a little hot on his little face. Actually, it's not that pretty either. It's just that Su Mu's ferocious gaze made him feel quite at a loss. Su Mu walked forward step by step, and Mikomo was forced to step back step by step. Until retreating behind a huge rock, the cold rock reached the soft back, and there was no way out. Su Mu put one hand out on the left side of Mikomo's head, and one hand out on Mikomo's right side. He stared at Mikomo intently. This movement is like a waldong. Almost immediately, Mikomo was separated from the outside world, so that Mikomo could only face himself obediently. Sensing this scene, Mikomo lowered his head in a daze, and his fair face was flushed like sunset. The small mouth makes a slight sound like a mosquito wing flapping its wings. You. What are you going to do? Su Mu stretched out his hand, and placed his fingers gently on Mikomo's lips. He looked at Mikomo, with extremely domineering eyes in his golden eyes. It's like in a Dog Blood TV series, the black-bellied and domineering president bullies a commoner girl. You have seen all of this ghost. Do you want to take responsibility for this ghost? Negative. Negative. Take responsibility. Mikomo was stupefied for a moment, and then made a small face at Hong Zujo. But Mu already has a fiancé. Suddenly, I felt my heart beating so fast, as if it was beating a drum. If I intervened between Mu and Suyuri Kanao, wouldn't I be acting as a little three? But Mikomo doesn't want to be a little three. You How are you going to hold Makomo accountable? The small voice was a bit shy. You really want to be responsible? Sumiu looked at Makomo blankly. He was just joking with Makomo just now. What? Makomo froze for a moment, then realized that Sumiu was playing with her again, making fun of her. Although I am used to being made fun of by Sumiu, but this time, it was really too much. Standing on tiptoe, he hugged Sumiu almost at once. Then, the white and tender teeth opened and bit Suemiu's chest. Bite you to death, you big bad guy. Feeling the pain in his chest, Sumiu felt quite at a loss and wanted to reach out and hit Makomo. But the palm is raised high, but I really can't let it go. Such a cute Makomo crying. I'm afraid I'm going to cry for a long time. It's just that my chest hurts. It feels like Makomo is a real ghost compared to himself, eating his flesh. Big villain, tell you to bully me, I will bite you to death. Makomo murmured, and the white and tender teeth were bloodshot. It can be seen that Makomo is really a little angry. Hearing Makomo's muttering, Sumiu also realized that he was really too much joking about the truth. For a girl like Makomo, she has been an orphan since she was a child. She has no father or mother. She was adopted by Yorokodaki Sakanji when she was a child. The only people I come into contact with are the master Yorokodaki Sakanji, the senior brother Please Rabbit, and the senior fellow and senior sister. But following the senior brothers and senior sisters began to participate in the trial of Tang Chishan's ghost-killing team, one after another did not come back, and Makomo saw even fewer people. Only Jingtu and the master Yorokodaki Sakanji. The master, Yorokodaki Sakanji, has a gentle personality, and Makomo's character, like the master Yorokodaki Sakanji, is a very gentle person. But, after all, she is a girl, with the cunning of a girl. She has been living in the deep mountains, has never seen the mundane world, is a simple-minded woman who is not of the world, and is very good at distinguishing men's jokes. What's more, some of Suemiu's jokes are jokes in his world, but in this world, the degree of blandness is quite embarrassing. If it falls into the ears of a simple girl like Zhenzang, how big it will be. Of destructive power. Moreover, girls like Makomo who live in the Kiriyama Mountains have no friends, or in other words, no friends of the opposite sex. Shawushin's master, senior brother, and senior sister are all regarded by her as family members. Sees master Yorokodaki Sakanji as his father. He regards senior brother and White Rabbit as his big brother. And when the opposite sex that the relatives thought appeared suddenly, it gave Makomo a completely different feeling from what the brothers and sisters stayed in the misty mountains of the gorge. That kind of feeling made Makomo obsessed and wanted to hold on to it. Although Makomo knows that Miu has a fiancé, she should not be too close to a girl. However, every time Sumiu said a joke one by one, it always makes Makomo's heart rippling. The impulse in my heart became stronger and stronger. For a simple and serious girl like Makomo, once she really likes one, she will be extremely dedicated. Therefore, when I found that what I said seriously was the other party's teasing, I couldn't help but feel a kind of anger at being played with. So, at this moment, Sumiu felt that she was really going too far, bowed her head. Biting herself, slightly annoyed girl. Sumiu is greedy when she blames herself. Greedy want to have. Human nature is inherently greedy, like Makomo, like Suyuri Kanao, like Nezuko. There is nothing better in these demon slayer worlds. I always want to hold it in my hand involuntarily. Although it is a bit shameless, then it will continue to be so shameless. It's already a ghost anyway, isn't it? People are inherently greedy, let alone a ghost like him. After thinking about this, his mood gradually became brighter. Before, he really had many concerns, fearing that he would hurt a girl like Makomo. But, if Makomo doesn't mind, then let your greed ferment. Thinking of this, Suemiu's heart became inexplicably brighter. She lowered her head and looked at Makomo with tenderness in her eyes. The place where she was bitten was still painful, but considering the ghost's body, it was not considered an injury. The raised palm raised, and finally fell slowly, patted Makomo's back lightly, and smiled gently. Don't bite yourself. His gentle voice was very soft, and he didn't care that he was bitten by Makomo, but he was concerned that Makoto stopped biting himself. After all, he is a ghost, and if he is injured, he can almost heal in a short time. The warm voice poured into Makomo's heart like a warm current. Girls like Makomo are rarely treated with such warm words. Like a master Yorokodaki Sakanji, though gentle, would not say such a thing. For example, senior brother, Please Rabbit, it is even more impossible for that arrogant person to say such nasty words. Although Suemiu's words are nasty, they may sound disgusting to outsiders, but for girls who really like you, this is definitely the sweetest poison. The sweetness made him willing to drink it even if he knew it was poison. Some shyly let go of the white and tender teeth, looking at the place where the blood was bitten. Makomo blamed himself. I'm sorry. It's really unreasonable for Makomo to hurt his own ghost when he treats him so tenderly. Makomo kept his head down, blaming himself. At the same time, I feel that Mew is really a gentle ghost who can tolerate her nonsense. Mew smiled and patted Makomo's head. What are you sorry for? Makomo lifted his small head, looked at Mew with beautiful eyes, and blinked his beautiful eyes blankly. After all, my Makomo is so cute, no matter what she does, no one will blame her. Mew spoke seriously, unconsciously holding Makomo's little hand. Makomo turned his head shyly, broke free with his palm symbolically, and then stopped breaking free, acquiescing to the feeling of being held by Mew. There is a warmth, a feeling of being protected. For Makomo, this is an extremely cherished thing, something that is willing to protect with life. I suddenly wished that time would pass slowly, so that I could be led by Mew for a longer period of time. However, I still feel a little shy, squinting my beautiful eyes, looking at the beautiful morning sun. You villain, you always say some inconspicuous words. What is it? Makomo is your Makomo. Of course it's my Makomo. Mew hugged Makomo from behind, put Makomo in his arms, and looked at the beautiful sunrise in the sky. As a ghost, he was bathed in the sun, and the sunlight was so hot that it made him feel extremely uncomfortable. But the warmth in his bosom, like sweet spring water, nourished his soul. Makomo, the view from the top of this mountain is really beautiful. He held Makomo tightly in his arms and pointed to the rising sun. Makomo also looked at the sun naturally. It's beautiful. More importantly, because there is someone I like to accompany, so everything feels beautiful. From now on, Makomo will belong to me alone. There was a ghostly voice in his ear. I don't want it. You have a fiancé, so don't be a little vixen. Mew scratched Makomo's little nose with her fingers. Anyway, in my eyes, Makomo is a little vixen. What the hell? Makomo broke free from Mew's embrace immediately, put his hands on his hips angrily, and clenched his small fists, as if he wanted to give Mew a good look. Seeing the cute girl Makomo, Mew said the following sentence very naturally. Makomo is a little vixen in my heart. My whole heart is captivated by you little fox, Makomo. The girl's face was like a burning cloud, glowing red, and under the reflection of the beautiful morning sun, it became more and more beautiful. You are a little villain, so I don't believe your nonsense. Makomo muttered, his beautiful eyes unknowingly bent into a beautiful crescent shape. The corners of the mouth were raised unconsciously, with a beautiful arc raised upwards. Makomo stood on her tiptoes and put on a bamboo hat for Mew. She could clearly feel that although Mew could bathe in the sun, she was not used to the sun. She could feel that when the sun shines on the Mew, when you are on your body, the other party will feel very uncomfortable. And as the bamboo hat blocked the sun, the burning sensation on Mew's body disappeared a lot, and she felt very cool. He, after all, is still not quite used to being in the sun. Mew, in the future, don't expose your secret easily, you understand? Makomo said to Mew seriously while helping Mew tidy up his clothes. At the same time, with a bit of complaint. How can there be such a stupid ghost like you in the world, to expose the fact that you can bathe in the sun in front of me, who is inspiring to be an excellent member of the ghost-killing team? Although it was a complaint, there was a trace of inexplicable happiness in the words. It seems to have mastered someone's little tricks and little secrets all of a sudden, and I feel happy. At the same time, there is a pleasant feeling of being trusted in the heart. Mew smiled, because he was sure that Makomo would not tell others, so he would bathe in the sun. Naturally holding Makomo's little hand. Let's go. Today I will continue to visit the Kamado family. Okay. Makomo nodded. Mew and Makomo's footsteps are very fast, and it is very easy for them to climb several mountains. Soon, the house where the Kamado family lived appeared in front of him. When Mew and Makomo appeared, Kamado Tanjiro, who was exercising at the door, noticed them. Good morning, sir. Kamado Tanjiro waved his palms happily, and then ran towards them quickly with strides. In front of Mew, Tanjiro bowed respectfully. Hello, Tanjiro. For Tanjiro, the protagonist of the Demon Slayer, he appreciates it very much, and at the same time, he is sorry. After all, according to the ending of the anime, he took away Tsuyuri Kanao, the wife who originally belonged to Tanjiro. However, Tsuyuri Kanao has been regarded by him as his own, and it is impossible to give it to the other party. Of course, to express his apology, he will not let the tragic thing that happened to the Kamado factory happen again. At the same time, try to treat Tanjiro's father Kamado Tanjiro as much as possible, so that the Kamado family can live happily. Tanjiro scratched his head, and looked behind Sumiu unconsciously, but he didn't see anyone else. The boy's eyes were slightly disappointed. He thought that Sumiu would bring a doctor to treat his father today. After all, his father's illness became more and more serious, and he was very worried. Seemingly seeing what Kamado Tanjiro was thinking, Sumiu said with a smile, "My friend is quite special, he can't come during the day, he can only come at night." When he left yesterday, he passed the message to Tamayo. At the beginning, when they parted with Tamayo, they agreed with each other on how to contact each other in the future. Hearing that the doctor would come at night, Tanjiro jumped up excitedly, he was so happy. After all, this is related to his father's illness. Seemingly realizing that he had lost his composure, Tanjiro also scratched his head in embarrassment. "I'm very sorry, just now." "It's okay, take me to Mr. Tanjiro," he said softly. "Yesterday, I heard the other party talk about the God of Fire Kagura dance, and the breathing that needs to be paid attention to. Today, I will focus on understanding the transparent world that the other party has achieved." "Okay." Tanjiro hurriedly led the way ahead. Sumiu and Makomo also followed behind. "Mr. Tanjiro, good morning." "When I got to the house, I saw Kamado Tanjiro lying on the bed," Sumiu spoke respectfully. "Good morning." Kamado Tanjiro smiled gently, but when he looked at Sumiu, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Sumiu gave him a completely different feeling from yesterday. If points are to be distinguished, Sumiu gave him a very eerie feeling yesterday, with a very dark aura, the so-called ghost aura. But today, although the feeling Sumiu gave him still contained a gloomy feeling, but it was more hot and warm. "Moreover, I feel that Suemiu's breath is stronger than yesterday." "You learned?" Kamado Tanjiro's eyes widened, Suemiu's speed was beyond his imagination. "Yes, I learned a little bit, and I would like to thank Mr. Tanjiro for his disgusting explanation yesterday." Sumiu said gratefully, "Congratulations." Kamado Tanjiro couldn't help congratulating. "Next, please send me through the world." Sumiu bent slightly. "It is good." Kamado Tanjiro didn't say much, stretched out his hand, asked them to sit down nearby, and then began to explain to Sumiu what he knew about the transparent world. The transparent world. That is, the world that can be seen when the brain becomes transparent, and the highest realm, that can only be reached after working hard and enduring pain. In this state, by focusing and shutting off superfluous senses, the creature's body appears transparent. The speed of one's own actions, the ability to predict and avoid attacks will all be significantly improved. The blood vessel flow in the opponent's lungs can also be clearly seen, and the contraction of one's own muscles can be grasped faster. Even grudges can be turned off freely according to needs, because the actions of enemies that are perceived to be accelerated will also appear to be slowed down. This is the so-called transparent world. In the room, Kamado Tanjiro spoke seriously, and Sumiu and Makomo listened carefully. Everything is so harmonious. In the kitchen, Kamado Kuiji is diligently working in the kitchen, preparing to cook a sumptuous lunch for guests and family members. Outside, Takeo, Shigeru, and Hanako are happily making snowmen. In another room, Nezuko is doing needlework. With the growth of age, Nezuko's figure has become more and more slim, and she has become more and more graceful. Many people in the town have praised that she will definitely be a good-looking beauty in the future. Soon, Nezuko finished the last stitch, and the little silver teeth bit the thin thread, looking with satisfaction at the mended jacket for Big Brother Tanjiro. Now, Big Brother can wear warmer clothes when going out to work, and it will be more decent when he sells charcoal in the town. Nezuko thought silently, poked his head out of the room quietly, and looked at the Big Brother who listened carefully to his father's speech. "My father was lecturing on some things I didn't understand. It's a pity that I am a girl, and I can't shoulder the heavy burden of the family like my big brother. However, Sweetuzi is also working hard to do what he should do in. Thinking of this, I feel happy again." His eyes fell from the back of the Big Brother and landed on Makomo. The fox mask on the top of the other's head is very beautiful. Moreover, this girl is also very beautiful and looks very powerful. Will I be like this female swordsman in the future? It will be very powerful, very powerful. I have some longing in my heart, and also. Nezuko's eyes fell on the boy wearing the bamboo hat. The black hat covered the opponent's appearance, so that people didn't know what the opponent looked like at all. What will this foreign guest look like? Also, the clothes the other party is wearing look so thin, will it be cold? I should also make a piece of clothing for the other party. After all, the other party is so good, and even looking for a doctor for my father, I have to repay the other party. By the way, I don't know the name of this person yet. It's time to ask. Sunset when it was nightfall again, Sumiu also got up to say goodbye. What a bother. He stood up, bowed slightly, and thanked Kamado Tanjiro. The other party's explanation about the transparent world was very helpful to him, but it was a pity that he could not understand it immediately, and he needed to comprehend it carefully before he could fully understand it. Still, thanks a lot. Nothing. The road is dark at night, be careful on the road at night, I won't see you off. Kamado Tanjiro shook his head while exhorting. It is very difficult for him to stand up because of his weak body. Of course, it is possible to forcefully stand up, but if he does that, he will probably. We'll be watching. Sumiyu nodded, and then patted Tanjiro on the shoulder. Don't sleep tonight, I may bring the doctor over, and you will need to open the door then. It is good. Seeing Sumiyu leave, Tanjiro was still a little disappointed, but after hearing Suemyu's words, he immediately clenched his fist excitedly. Watched by Kamado's family, Suemyu's photo left again. Walking on the road, it can be felt that as the sun slowly sets, the breath of ghosts near the Kamado family has become active again. If it weren't for some restrictions, 100 ghosts would have been walking around at night in this nearby area. After crossing several mountain ranges, Sumiyu turned his head at a place far away from Hataman's house. The golden eyes are staring into the distance, the little sparks surrounded by ghostly breath. Kibutsuji Muzan is really cautious enough. He is afraid of spying on the Kamado family for many years, right? He has been able to endure it until now and not do anything. He whispered softly. Sure enough, Kibutsuji Muzan was really frightened by Ji Guoyuan. It can no longer be described as cautious, but timid seems more appropriate. However, why hasn't Tamayo come yet? Looking around, Sumiyu frowned slightly. This is where they agreed. Meow. A cat meow sounded suddenly, and Sumiyu turned her head sharply. Out of nowhere, a cat came out of thin air. It's Cha-Cha-Wan. Sumiyu bent down, stretched out her hand, and gently touched the cat's little head. This cat is the tool they use to communicate with Tamayo. In the anime, Tanjiro kills Kyogai and collects the ghost blood from Kyogai's body. This cat is used to transmit the message. After gently stroking Jimmy's small head with his hand, he stretched out his hand to the small school bag that the cat was carrying. From the bag, I found a letter. I'm very sorry, because I was followed by 12 Kazuki on the road, I couldn't make it in time. Our current address is at. Looking at the contents on the envelope, Suemyu's eyes flashed coldly. It seems that we need to take action. The golden eyes flickered with a hint of cold killing. Walk. He looked at Makomo beside him. Okay. Makomo nodded. Under the moonlit night, two figures galloped in one direction. The bright moon hangs high, in a dark place, Zu and Yushiru hide carefully. Master Tamayo. We shouldn't have come here, otherwise, we wouldn't have been targeted by 12 Kazuki. Yushiru gritted his teeth, he didn't have a good impression of that ghost, especially at this moment he was being targeted by 12 Kazuki. Yushiru. Tamayo's slightly annoyed voice sounded. It seemed that Master Tamayo was a little angry, and Yushiru couldn't help but shut his mouth, but he was still a little unconvinced. Looking at Yushiru who turned his head away, Tamayo couldn't help shaking his head. This Yushiru is still like a child. Since Sir invited me over, there must be something important. Tamayo explained. But if you act rashly like today, it will be easy to be found. Yushiru was also a little annoyed. He knew that Master Tamayo wanted to kill Kibutsuji Muzan. But, more dance out there, Muzan is so easy to deal with. Although that ghost is powerful, it is far worse than Kibutsuji Muzan. It is too blind to count on that ghost. Just like now, because of his hasty movements, he exposed his breath, and was targeted by 12 Kazuki's Kamanu. Now, he doesn't know how to get rid of Kamanu. I have asked Cha-Cha-Wan to send a message to Mr. He should come to support soon. Tamayo shook his head. Yushiru felt very annoyed when he heard Mr. Tamayo talking about each other. All these years, he had always loved Mr. Tamayo, but he never dared to express his feelings. He hated anyone who came into contact with Mr. Tamayo. Especially after the last contact with Sumiyu, he could clearly feel the difference in Master Tamayo's attitude towards this ghost. Especially yesterday, after receiving the letter from that ghost, he left without hesitation. Even if there was an active atmosphere of 12 Kazuki nearby, Master Tamayo did not hesitate. This made Yushiru very jealous. Master Tamayo, I think we don't know anything about that ghost. Who knows if that ghost will do us any harm? Besides, Master Tamayo is so beautiful, that ghost in Shishi has evil intentions. Yushiru finally couldn't hold back his mouth. Tamayo looked up, looked at Yushiru, and shook his head in disappointment. Yushiru, you shouldn't have such a deep prejudice against Mr. But. Yushiru patted the ground with his hands annoyed. But. We only met that ghost once, so we believe him? Why should we trust him so much? I don't know why to believe Mr. Tamayo looked at Yushiru with a wry smile. If you really want to say why, I can only say that according to my feeling, in Tamayo's opinion, Mr. is different from other ghosts. Hateful. Seeing that Master Tamayo, whom he admired so much, believed in that ghost, Yushiru was extremely annoyed and clenched his fists unconsciously. The strong jealousy made him almost go crazy. Suddenly, a violent explosion sounded around Tamayo and Yushiru. The ground shook, and a big hole was directly exposed where the two were hiding. A ghost appeared. Seeing Yushiru and Tamayo hiding here, he couldn't help grinning. Haha. Finally found you. I thought it was my illusion before. I didn't expect it to be you. If it wasn't for you just now, you unintentionally leaked a breath. I can't find you. Kamado proudly looked at Tamayo and Yushiru in front of him, with greedy and excited eyes. Catch these two rebels. He will definitely be able to get the attention of Lord Muzan, and he will definitely be able to get more blood from him. It's over. Looking at Kamado, who appeared in front of him, Yushiru almost closed his eyes in despair. Master Tamayo. We really shouldn't believe in that ghost, otherwise, we wouldn't. Yushiru turned his head and spoke angrily to Tamayo. At the same time, I also felt a little regretful, because I was too angry just now, and showed my body. However, even so, a look of determination appeared in Yushiru's eyes. Master Tamayo. I will definitely be able to protect you. Yushiru, don't force yourself. Sir should be on his way. We can delay until your arrival. Tamayo shook his head. Damn. You still believe in that ghost at this point? Yushiru was really angry. That ghost can't protect Master Tamayo. Only I can protect Master Tamayo. Ha ha. After a burst of laughter, Kamado looked at Yushiru with disdain. You are a weak chicken, no one can protect you. However, I am very interested in the ghost you mentioned. Who is that ghost? Tell me, maybe I can let you go. Have you figured it out? Tell me about the ghost in your mouth, maybe I will let you go. Kamado stared at Tamayo and Yushiru with scarlet eyes, and let out an eerie laugh. Tamayo's gentle face was unmoved, not wavered in the slightest. Yushiru's expression moved slightly. If he didn't know that even if he told the ghost would never let them go, he would have said it long ago. It seems that I don't want to say it. Kamanyo's face was grim. If you don't say it, then I will hit you to say it. The next moment, his figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Tamayo almost in the next second. The sharp claws stretched out and grabbed Tamayo's gentle face directly. It would be a pity if such a beautiful face is ruined. Master Tamayo. The face of Yushiru next to him changed greatly in fright. Qianqin pushed the ball out without hesitation. The arm was torn apart and fell to the ground. Yushiru covered Tamayo and stepped back, his face turned pale. Cold sweat dripped from his forehead. Although for ghosts, as long as they are not hurt by the fatal place, they are almost immortal. Even if their arms are directly torn off like now, for ghosts, they can heal in a short time, but the pain is impossible. Immune. I didn't expect you, a weak chicken, to have some courage. Kamado looked at Yushiru's fair face, slightly surprised. Damn. Being scolded as a coward, Yushiru's face was also very ugly. Master Tamayo, you go first, I will hold him back. Yushiru put one hand into his pocket, and a piece of something like Sha appeared on his hand. The talisman was just pasted lightly on the body, and the whole person seemed to disappear in place at once. Blood ghost technique. Kamado sneered. Hee. I want to see what kind of blood ghost technique it is. Standing there quietly, immediately, as if feeling something all of a sudden, he grabbed it at a place where there was no one in front of him. Well. As if grabbing something all of a sudden, there was an unbearable sound of, huh, in the air. 5 fingers pinched suddenly. Crack. With the sound of bones breaking, a head fell to the ground, and Yushiru's body was also thrown to the ground by Kamado at this moment. Master Tamayo. Let's go. Even with only one head, Yushiru urged Tamayo loudly and hastily. Kamado sneered. It's useless, I can't escape, I'm Master Kamado. The ghost let out a wild laugh. I really don't understand how these two little weak chickens escaped for so many years without being caught by adults. Step by step to Tamayo. When passing by Yushiru, he stomped on Yushiru's head. Tamayo raised his eyes and looked coldly at Kamado, who kept walking towards him. Gently stretching out his hand, a small scalpel blade appeared in Tamayo's hand. Want to kill me with this little blade? Kamado let out a hay sneer. Tamayo's face was serious. The scalpel was not swung at the enemy, but at his own arm. Are you scared, stupid? Kamado laughed triumphantly. Blood-confused fragrance of visual dreams. Tamayo murmured softly. With the blood dripping from Tamayo's arm, the surrounding air began to smell fragrant. Kamado, who was walking towards Tamayo, stopped involuntarily, and a dreamy color began to appear on his face. It's like being in some kind of dreamlike scenery all of a sudden. Kamado seemed to see an incredible pattern in his vision. This is. Tell me the name of that lord. Tamayo's cold voice sounded. The grown-up's name. Kamado murmured in confusion, and couldn't help but want to say the name of the adult, but a strong sense of fear suddenly hit him, causing the word Shalu engraved on his left eye to flicker. Gritting his teeth violently, traces of blood flowed from his lips, and Kamado also woke up all of a sudden. Damn it! Kamado stepped forward almost suddenly, grabbed Tamayo's fair neck and lifted him up. Damn. 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 Kamado stared at the woman in front of him angrily, and almost saw the woman's words. If he really said the name of Lord Kibutsuji Muzan just now, he might be killed by a curse. For such a weak woman, she almost fell into the other party's way. Annoyed, extremely annoyed, let go of Master Tamayo. Yushiru, whose head had already been crushed, couldn't help roaring as he watched Tamayo-sama being lifted up by the neck by Kamado, who was struggling in pain. At this moment, I really hated myself for not being able to protect Master Tamayo. Hate their own weakness. Obviously, I have promised to protect Lord Tamayo for the rest of my life, but now, I can only watch helplessly. You damn woman. Kamado licked his lips, lifted Tamayo's neck, and bumped against the wall next to him. The scarlet wound on the white head was knocked open suddenly. Master Tamayo. Yushiru closed his eyes in pain, hating himself for not being able to protect the world. It seems that you only need to bring a head back. Kamado stared at Tamayo, and spoke coldly. With 5 fingers stretched out, Tamayo's head was about to be pinched off. However, as if feeling something suddenly, he let go of the hand holding Tamayo's neck, and the whole figure retreated urgently. Choke. The cold light overflowed. At the place where Kamado was standing just now, a deep sword mark went deep into the ground. One can imagine that if he didn't dodge it in time just now, he might be cut in half directly. Although with the body of a ghost, even if it is cut in half, it will not die, but the pain is unavoidable. Tamayo unconsciously opened his eyes at this moment, looking at the boy in the bamboo hat standing in front of him. As the wind blows, the boy's black hair flutters with the wind. Compared to the first time we met, it seems that I have become stronger again. It's a little later than I expected. Tamayo pursed his lips and showed a gentle smile. Feel sorry. Su-mu showed a slight apology. Tamayo shook his head. It's come in time, but. Tamayo looked at the opponent's Kamado. This time the enemy may be a little stronger. One of the real 12 Kazuki. Su-mu smiled and looked at Kamado, the land of the lower strings. This ghost should be killed by Muzan after seeing his inner thoughts at the next strings gathering in the future. Exactly, isn't Ms. Tamayo lacking 12 Kazuki's ghost blood for research? The ghost in front of me is a good material. He looked at Kamado, who was opposite him, and showed a cruel smile. Are you ready to be beheaded by me? Are you ready to be decapitated by me? Land of the dead. Su-mu took a step forward, and under the bamboo hat, she stared at the ghost opposite with her golden eyes and sneered. Damn. Brat. Kamado gritted his teeth and looked at the kid on the opposite side. I really don't understand why this kid has the courage to challenge the land of the next string. I am the land of the understring in 12 Kazuki, Lord Kamado. A ghost who isn't even 12 Kazuki to provoke the land of the dead. Kamado raged annoyed, while mocking the imp's ignorance in front of him. 12 Kazuki. What a terrible name. Under the bamboo hat, the young man smiled and gently stroked the blade of the sword. However, these are all my hunting targets. You will be the first of them, land of the dead, you should be honored. Su-mu sneered. At the same time, the information of the ghost in front of him completely appeared in Zai's eyes. Name. Kamado ghost level. Lower string land, primary ghost, evolution ghost, lower string, upper string, ancestor of ghosts. Abilities. Immortal body, sharp, demon claw, demon hand, demon eye, demon leg, demon tongue, super healing. Disadvantages. Photophobia, wisteria, curse, from ghost ancestor Kibutsuji Muzan, old wheel knife. Seeing the ability of this ghost, Su-mu was stunned. The ability of 12 ghosts you seems to be a bit surprisingly much. You little brat, won't you be trembling with fear? Kamado bared his teeth. In the next second, his limbs fell to the ground like a beast. Get ready, be devoured by me. Kamado said. Boom, a powerful ground explosion sounded, and Kamanu's figure disappeared, and there were gusts of wind all around. Su-mu stood where he was, with his hand on the hilt of his sword. Breathe, concentrate on breathing. When the breath of the sun was breathed in from the tip of his nose and fell into his heart and lungs, the burning energy from the sun burned inside his body like a solar star. With a slightly painful roar, The ghost's body seemed to be stimulated by some kind of stimulation. The ghost's blood, which had always been cold-blooded, felt like it was about to boil at this moment. Strength are constantly emerging. The strong wind swept across, and something passed overhead, a gloomy cold light. He raised his sword very calmly, only slightly. Clang. When the ghost claws touched the blades of Nichiren blades, sparks burst out. When Kamado touched it, the figure retreated quickly, and circled around again. As it continued to move, the surrounding trees were cut off continuously, attracting billowing dust and sand. Bring you traitors back. Your Excellency will definitely be happy and give me more blood. It's an honor, you guys, will be the sacrifices I set foot on the string. Kamado gritted his teeth and sneered, as if the little ghost in front of him was already his prey, but the ghost eyes with the words, "Down to the land," engraved with them were solemn at the moment. The little ghost in front of him is very strong. Strength and drunkenness are no less than 12 advisable. When did such a powerful ghost appear, and why? The other party never challenged 12 Kazuki. But at this moment, Su Mu narrowed his eyes. Gently pressing the hand on the hilt of the sword, under the bamboo hat, the golden eyes lifted up, ignoring the strong wind around, just murmured softly. Lu Jinyu, the last string, give the head. Slight words came out, and it seemed that in the next second, he was going to decapitate 12 Kazuki's Lu Dengnu. Are you kidding me? Kamado lay on all fours, running around Su Mu like a cheetah, looking for prey opportunities, trying to kill him with a fatal blow. In his eyes, the little devil in front of him had weaknesses almost everywhere, but he didn't dare to try it lightly, because it was a fatal weakness, he was easily blocked by the opponent. Damn. How to kill the little devil in front of me? Roaring in my heart. And at this moment, in Kamanyo's eyes, the little ghost who had remained motionless all this time suddenly moved. I saw that little devil's knees were slightly bent, and his hand was pressing on the hilt of the sword at his waist. Are you going to make a move? Kamado squinted his eyes and maintained a 100,000-degree alert. No matter how careless he was, he still noticed the unusualness of the little ghost in front of him. Notably, this imp also has the ghost hunter's weapon, the Nichiren blades. The boy's slightly bent knees moved, the soles of his feet bounced off the ground, and he jumped up instantly. The hand on the waist also moved instantly. There is a slight sound. The breath of the sun, one shape, round dance. An arc-shaped slash surrounded by flames suddenly came out. The flaming blade flashed across in an instant. Limbs fell to the ground, and the running figure stopped abruptly. The violent wind blowing around also stopped suddenly at this moment. The world suddenly returned to silence, able to hear. Only there was an extremely subtle click sound. A blood-stained head was thrown out, and the thrown head was instantly covered in flames, dissipated little by little, and finally completely dissipated before the lingering Kamanyo's sentence. How is it possible? In the distance, Tamayo's eyes widened. Among all the ghosts in this world, this one is very powerful, almost at the level that Joe yearns for, 12 Kazuki. But at this moment, it was a sword. With just one strike, the opponent has no time to resist at all. I thought that even if he could defeat the opponent, it would be an extremely fierce confrontation. However, not at all the battles were divided in just a split second. The Nichiren blades held by Su Mu slashed like a blazing blow, and the flames that burst out from the sword are still burning on the ground until now. Yushiru, who had been trampled into meatloaf by Kamado long ago, with only one eyeball left, stared blankly at the scene in front of him. The ghost surprisingly powerful. Even if it is as strong as 12 Kazuki, the opponent is only one knife. The boy's figure fell to the ground along with Kamanyo's head, and the powerful sword that was cut out was now in the scabbard. The moonlit night was still so soft, shining on the boy's body. Everything is so gentle. He raised his eyes and looked at Kamanyo's body, which was being killed by his own Nichiren blades and was constantly turning into black smoke and dissipating into the world. He frowned. He glanced at Tamayo, who was still watching all this in a daze, and asked with some confusion, "Miss Tamayo, you don't need 12 Kazuki's ghost blood anymore?" Tamayo was taken aback, looking at Kamado, who was turning into black smoke and about to disappear. Tamayo also exclaimed, hurriedly searched for the needle, and began to draw Kamanyo's ghost blood. Su Mu watched this scene quietly. I can feel the sadness in the air following Kamanyo's death. That is the obsession of being a human being. Even an existence like 12 Kazuki was once still a human being, with memories that once belonged to a human being. Only when the nature of ghosts becomes stronger and stronger, the beauty that once belonged to humans is slowly forgotten, but at the moment of death, the beauty of the past reappears, and those beauty are destroyed by the former self. Qing's sadness emerges. Sad, deplorable. Not to mention all the ghosts in Demon Slayer, but at least most of them are poor. When they were humans, they had many weaknesses, such as being addicted to money, or greedy for pleasure, etc. After becoming ghosts, their weaknesses will be framed within a narrow range of emotions. It may seem hateful, but in fact they all had heartrending experiences. They are very pitiful, whether they are in the human world or in the world of ghosts. None of them were ever recognized. Ding! Congratulations to the host, beheaded a ghost, and got the ghost's eye. Ghost's eye. Exploring and breaking through obstacles can break through illusions. Along with beheading Kamado in 12 Kazuki, the familiar voice also rang in his ears. At this moment, he felt that his eyes had some sort of ability. Seem as long as the mind moves, will be able to. Under the bamboo hat, the golden eyes unconsciously looked at Miss Tamayo. There is nowhere to hide. Wrapped under the clothes are. Call. Even if it is a ghost, it can control its breathing, but at this moment, it still feels a little short. Tamayo had just finished drawing Kamanu's ghost blood with a needle. Suddenly, he felt as if someone was watching him, and he turned his head unconsciously. It was Su Mu who was looking at her side. Some doubts, she couldn't see the eyes of the other party because of the cover of the bamboo hat, so she didn't know the bursts of strange light in Su Mu's golden eyes at the moment. However, even though I can't see it, my intuition as a woman still feels the gaze of Mr. It's too overbearing and strong. Sir, what's the matter? Being watched all the time, Tamayo turned around a little puzzled, and presented almost no secrets in front of his eyes. Under the bamboo hat, Su Mu hastily turned her head and also put away the Eye of Grace. Although, by beheading the land from 12 Kazuki, he obtained an ability similar to the Ghost Claw, obtained by beheading ordinary ghosts before. But for some reason, he didn't feel disappointed. On the contrary, there is a feeling that the trip was worthwhile. This ability seems to be surprisingly easy to use. If defective, that is, it's a bit of an eyesore. Especially seeing some beautiful things, it is even more eye-catching. Is the blood drawn? Su Mu turned her back, and her tone of voice was obviously strange. It's been drawn, sir. Tamayo nodded happily. With Kamado, the blood from 12 Kazuki, his research can be further improved. I believe that he will be able to research the potion that turns ghosts into adults in a short time. On this point, she is very confident. This is the confidence of being a top doctor. That's good. Su Mu's voice was slightly hoarse, and what he imagined in his mind was still the beautiful scenery that the ghost's eyes had just seen. Everything is too tempting. Sir, is there something wrong with your body? Tamayo looked at Su Mu with some concern, and obviously felt that Su Mu's situation was not right. When he thought about the battle with the mighty 12 Kazuki just now, he might have suffered some kind of injury. Sir, hold out your hand and let me see. Tamayo also asked with some concern. She has always had a good impression of Su Mu, especially last time. The other party's recognition of her made her feel like a like-minded person. I'm fine. Su Mu said in a hoarse voice. He was naturally aware of his situation, but he just saw what he shouldn't have seen, and in addition to the fight just now, he was already blood boiling, and then he was stimulated. Show me. I'm a doctor. I'll do what I say. If it leaves some hidden wounds, it's not okay. Tamayo said earnestly, although ghosts generally do not have hidden wounds, after all, ghosts have a very powerful healing ability. But it doesn't count that way. After all, there is a strange existence of vampirism, and whether the opponent is from 12 Kazuki, it is better to be careful. Su Mu didn't want to reach out. But immediately, his hand was grasped by a white palm, and the slightly slippery feeling slid over the palm, making his heart tremble slightly. Under the bamboo hat, the golden eyes lifted up, and fell on Tamayo unconsciously. That gentle and pretty face is just right. A charm that has matured for hundreds of years. I felt shortness of breath, and my heart was pounding. Sir. There seems to be something wrong with your body, your heartbeat, your body temperature, your... Tamayo looked up and said the diagnosis as a doctor. But, when he raised his head, he saw those golden eyes. The things contained in those golden eyes were a little too domineering and aggressive. For a moment, he seemed to realize something, and felt that the palm he was grasping seemed to be a little hot. He hurriedly let go of his hand, took a few steps back, turned his head, and wiped the black hair on his forehead somewhat unnaturally. Sir, I'm sorry. Just now, Tamayo's diagnosis was wrong. In fact, there is no problem. She said somewhat unnaturally. Hundreds of years ago, when she was still a human being, she had a child, so she naturally understood that although it has been a long time since that look in her eyes, it doesn't mean she didn't know it all. The domineering and aggressive eyes made her face a little feverish. She didn't expect this ghost to have thoughts about her. Somewhat overwhelmed. After all, from the very beginning, she never had such an idea, and never thought that this brat would have thoughts about her. Well, good. I see. Su-mu withdrew her hand naturally, put her hands behind her back, raised her head, and looked at the full moon in the sky. Now, go and treat Yushiru first. After being reminded by Su-mu, Tamayo remembered Yushiru now, and hurriedly walked towards Yushiru who had only one eyeball left. After some treatment, Yushiru quickly recovered and became an adult again. Thank you Master Tamayo, Yushiru said gratefully. It should be me who said thank you, and it was you who protected me that made this happen. Tamayo shook his head. No, this is what Yushiru wants. Yushiru shook his head, his eyes were firm. Yushiru once swore to protect Master Tamayo forever. In the distance, looking at Yushiru who turned into a licking dog, Su-mu felt a little uncomfortable. Protection is not what you say, but what you do. He interjected very flatly. Yushiru's tone couldn't help being choked, and he lowered his head in shame. Indeed, his own strength was too weak. When the real danger came, he could only watch Tamayo-sama fall into danger. But this brat he looked down upon easily beheaded 12 Kazuki who was invincible in his own eyes. I will work hard. Yushiru clenched his fists and said to Su-mu seriously. Su-mu shrugged and looked at Tamayo. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time. The death of a ghost like 12 Kazuki, I believe, Kibutsuji Muzan should have a sense of it. If so, he would like to come and take a look on a whim. With his current strength, he is not yet Kibutsuji Muzan's opponent. It is good. Tamayo nodded, facing Su-mu's gaze, he turned his head unnaturally. Now she doesn't know how to face this ghost Su-mu. I really didn't expect the other party to have thoughts about her. After all, she has been single for hundreds of millions of years. For Tamayo, she has been single for hundreds of years. Now that she has become a ghost, few ghosts would consider being single. Although she looks pretty, she really has no ghosts to pursue. Of course, Yushiru is one, but for Tamayo, she doesn't have much feelings for Yushiru. After all, when she rescued Yushiru and turned Yushiru into a ghost, Yushiru was just a child. Therefore, Tamayo has always treated Yushiru as a child, and has never considered such a problem. Moreover, although Yushiru loves Tamayo and likes Tamayo in his heart, he never dares to express this love. So, Tamayo still doesn't know that Yushi has admiration for her. However, Su-mu was different, the domineering and aggressive eyes just now were almost undisguised. That domineering look seemed to have penetrated her clothes. Thinking of Su-mu's fiery eyes, Tamayo felt his heart beat a little faster, and an inexplicable feeling emerged. She didn't expect Su-mu, a ghost, to have thoughts about her. Moreover, it is so hot. As a female ghost, she used to be a woman, so she naturally saw that the girl called Makomo who followed Su-mu actually liked him. Otherwise, how could a human follow a ghost and listen to a ghost like this? It's just that people and ghosts are different after all. Can ghosts still be with people? Ghosts, of course, can only be with ghosts. Tamayo shook her head violently. Why did she suddenly have so many thoughts in her heart? Could it be that she has been single for too long? Hoo-hoo. Take a deep breath, and your chest rises and falls violently with your breathing. The mood also became calmed down. I shouldn't think so much, after all, Kibutsuji Muzan hasn't been killed yet, how can I think about this? Tamayo bit his red lips firmly, expelling the strange thoughts in his heart, and then his mood calmed down slightly. Yushiru is indeed not very good at fighting, but he is indeed first class in cleaning the battlefield and expelling the breath. Seeing Yushiru skillfully sweep away all the aura left by the scene, Su-mu couldn't help showing a hint of admiration in his eyes. Rustling. The leaves trembled. Someone is coming. Both Yushiru and Tamayo couldn't help feeling tense. Don't worry, it's Makomo. Su-mu said softly, in order to prevent accidents, he could only leave Makomo behind and arrive first. Logically speaking, Makomo was faster than him, but he should have arrived first. But it doesn't mean that you will be able to arrive first if you are fast. For some things, you need to consider the actual situation. For example, Makomo's speed is fast, but his physical strength is limited. Full rate. So, at the very beginning, Makomo was ahead of him, but later, he surpassed him. Zu and Makomo, who were nervous at first, also came down at once. The slim figure fell. Finally arrived. The girl gasped slightly, and her gradually developing chest heaved. Su-mu stepped forward and patted Makomo's back gently. Since the scene on the mountaintop that morning, the relationship between the two has actually advanced by leaps and bounds. Although they didn't say it explicitly, they almost regard each other as their lovers. Being patted on the back by Mu, his breathing slowly calmed down, and suddenly, as if he felt something, he suddenly raised his head. Someone outside saw it. The little face was flushed. Although the two outsiders were ghosts, they were still a little shy and looked at the scene unnaturally. Is everything resolved? Su-mu nodded. Hearing this, Makomo's eyes were slightly disappointed. This time, he couldn't help the makeup. We should get out of here, he said to Makomo. It is good. Makomo naturally has no objection to the words of Mu, and after these days, he has gradually gotten used to listening to Mu's words. Seeing a ghost and a woman walking ahead, Yushiru breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that this ghost has no idea about Master Tamayo. Tamayo's gentle eyes are slightly complicated. She can feel that Mr. likes that human girl, but Mr. doesn't understand. Is he a ghost? And that human girl should still belong to the ghost-killing squad bar. Now, we're going to the Kamado family. While several people were running, Su-mu also began to talk. This time, Ms. Tamayo was invited to come, and the main reason is that Ms. Zhu helped treat a person. Rescue a person. Tamayo looked at Su-mu with a pair of beautiful eyes. For Tamayo, it was the first time in hundreds of years that a ghost asked to save a person. As a ghost, she has accepted many requests from humans to save humans, but she has never accepted ghosts' requests to save humans. Is that person special? Tamayo couldn't help asking. The person who can make Mr. ask for medical treatment should not be an ordinary person. Su-mu nodded. The person he treated is the inheritor of Ji Guoyuan's will, and at the same time, he is also a very powerful person. He didn't hide it, and would explain Kamado Tanjiro's situation. It can be said that in the world of Demon Slayer, Kamado Tanjiro is a hidden master of the small boss level. If he can take a master like Kamado Tanjiro for his own use, it will undoubtedly increase his protection. After all, Men Lang is not a member of the Ghost Slayer squad. Although, now, he and the Demon Slayer squad have the same goal, to kill Kibutsuji Muzan first. But Su-mu never forgets that he is also a ghost himself. Moreover, when the common goal of Kibutsuji Muzan is removed, he and the Ghost Slayer team have no common goal, and the rest is between the Ghost Slayer squad and him. Who can guarantee that the ghost killing team will not attack this ghost like him? He is not used to entrusting his life in the hands of others. The inheritor of the will of the adult. Tamayo couldn't help but let out an exclamation. For Tamayo, he will never forget the battle between Ji Guoyuan and Kibutsuji Muzan. For thousands of years, only Ji Guoyuan is the closest and has the best chance to kill Kibutsuji Muzan. Then we must work hard to treat it. Tamayo nodded. If he is really the inheritor of that adult's will, then he really needs to be cured. It's just that I didn't expect that you could even find the inheritor of the will of that adult. Tamayo looked up at Su-mu. It's just a coincidence. Su-mu didn't care about the explanation. Is it really just a coincidence? Tamayo lowered his head, murmured slightly, then raised his head again, looking at the back of his husband, feeling more and more that his body seemed to be shrouded in an invisible fog. More and more unclear. I want to know more and more. What kind of ghost is this again? Why is it so different? It's like being out of this world, do not. Not like the ghosts of this world. Tamayo didn't know why he suddenly became so curious about Su-mu, but he did feel that Su-mu was the most special ghost he had seen in the past few hundred years. Even though they are both ghosts, Tamayo didn't feel the slightest ghost nature from Su-mu, a ghost. You must know that to become a ghost, you will eventually be distorted by ghost nature. For example, Yushiru, sometimes his personality will suddenly become explosive. Even her personality is inevitably affected by the ghost nature. However, after hundreds of years of physical transformation by drugs, she has gradually recovered her own personality in terms of personality. However, her transformation took hundreds of years of patience. How did this ghost Su-mu do it? Curious, Tamayo thought it was a good research topic. Walking silently all the way. Soon it is near the mountains where the Kamado family lives. When they got here, several people stopped involuntarily. Feel the breath in front. Yushiru frowned and looked into the distance, and Tamayo's hundreds of years of fleeing careers allowed them to easily detect the nearby aura. It can be clearly felt that there are many ghostly breaths outside the little sparks surrounding the dark mountains. The vicinity of that mountain range has long been surrounded by crowds. Even more terrifying near here, he keenly felt the breath from Kibutsuji Muzan. My heart suddenly tightened up. That's the breath of Kibutsuji Muzan. It's not wrong. Here, it has been monitored by Muzan, the ghost dancer. Feeling the strange gaze from Yushiru, Su-mu said it very calmly. Yushiru stretched out his finger and pointed at Su-mu. His eyes were shocked. This ghost was able to say the name of Kibutsuji Muzan. You must know that all the ghosts in this world are cursed by Kibutsuji Muzan. If you dare to speak the name of Kibutsuji Muzan, the curse in the body will explode. At that time, the body of the ghost will completely disintegrate from the inside out. However, when the ghost Sumyu said the name of Kibutsuji Muzan, nothing seemed to happen. Yushiru, calm down. Tamayo's gentle voice sounded. With the sound of Tamayo's voice, Yushiru also recovered from the shock. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on him. Obviously, he lost his composure. Because hearing the name of Kibutsuji Muzan, I lost my composure. In fact, although Giwu generally cannot say the name of Kibutsuji Muzan, this does not mean everything. At least that's the case with Master Tamayo and himself. Well, Sumyu, a ghost, dared to deal with Kibutsuji Muzan, and if he was still cursed by Kibutsuji Muzan, it would be too unreasonable. Feel sorry. Yushiru lowered his head in shame. Compared with Sumyu, this ghost who looked much younger than him, he felt that he was like a child in front of Sumyu. Not as good as Sumyu, the human woman next to her is like. At least, when she heard the name of Kibutsuji Muzan, she didn't panic as much as she did. Next, what shall we do? Tamayo raised his eyes and looked at Sumyu. Obviously, with their current strength, it is impossible for them to head with Kibutsuji Muzan. Tomorrow the day will pass. Tonight, we will rest here. Sumyu said seriously. Ghosts are creatures that walk in the dark. Sunlight during the day is what ghosts fear most. Even Kibutsuji Muzan cannot bathe in sunlight. Only during the day, when all ghosts are forced to hide in the depths of the caves in the mountains, is the safest time to pass, and the possibility of exposing themselves is too great when the night passes. Before, he really didn't think about this issue carefully, thinking that before leaving today during the day, he actually told Kamado Tanjiro, "Don't sleep tonight, I may bring the doctor over, and you will need to open the door then. I have some regrets." At that time, my own thinking was really not thoughtful. Daytime? Tamayo frowned slightly. Ghosts like her could not walk in the daytime. Even if they were covered in black clothes to avoid sunlight, it would be difficult for them to walk in the daytime. After all, a ghost like Sumyu who is different from this world will feel uncomfortable when the day comes, let alone a ghost like Tamayo. "I will make 2 boxes tonight, and tomorrow you will get into the boxes, and we will carry you there," Sumyu said. 2 boxes? Tamayo looked at Mew with some doubts, as if he had thought of something. His face blushed slightly. "Mister, do you want to be in the same box with Yushiru?" Sumyu was slightly taken aback, looking at Tamayo whose face was slightly flushed, probably knew that the other party was wrong. "No, it's Ms. Tamayo and Yushiru, you two, each with a box, and Makomo and I will be responsible for carrying you," Sumyu said lightly. "Sir, too." Tamayo's eyes revealed incredible colors. Ghosts are afraid of the sun even if they are covered in black clothes and their body is not exposed to the sun. Walking under the sun is very uncomfortable. Just like human beings are severely punished, at this time, there is no need to talk about rushing. "No problem." Sumyu waved his hand, signaling Tamayo not to worry. Tamayo hesitated to speak, but looked at Sumyu and didn't want to say more, so he had no choice but to stop talking. Now that he had decided to make a wooden box, Sumyu also went to cut down the tree soon, but Yushiru was handed over to make the box in the end. Yushiru is not good at fighting, but he is good at doing this kind of work. Soon, the 2 boxes are done. Now all they do is wait for the day to come. After finishing the box, Sumyu couldn't help looking at Makomo who was leaning on the rock and dozing slightly. In the past 2 days, Makomo basically didn't sleep. "It seems that I am really tired. Take a break." He came to Makomo and said softly. Makomo looked up, nodded obediently, and said, "Okay." However, the girl didn't fall asleep immediately, but patted her position next to the rock, and then tickled him with her little finger. Sumyu walked over and sat down next to the girl. Just sitting down, the body of Shang Ruan who was in his arms was the girl's body. Su Emu's body suddenly stiffened slightly. The girl naturally leaned her little head on his shoulder, and wrapped her hands around his waist. "Let me sleep in your arms." "Why?" The voice was muffled, full of exhaustion. After all, people are not ghosts. In the past 2 days, there has been no rest at all. Makomo, but he has been holding on. But Ghost has unlimited physical strength, so he didn't take this issue into consideration, and Makomo didn't say he was tired, so he naturally ignored it. In the distance, Tamayo and Yushiru watched Makomo start to rest beside the ghost Sumyu, their eyes slightly complicated. It's hard to imagine that a human would be so close to a ghost. Could it be this human? Aren't you afraid that ghosts will eat her? Starry. The night gradually deep. Makomo fell asleep leaning on Su Emu's shoulder from time to time, but his soft little hands were like iron tongs. Even when he fell asleep, he still hugged Su Emu's waist tightly. Tamayo came over at some point, looking at Makomo who was already asleep, with a bit of complexity in his eyes. Yushiru followed Master Tamayo, also watching the harmonious scene, 1 person and 1 ghost. standing next to each other, trusting each other. It is simply a good story in the world. If I can also be with Tamayo-sama. Yushiru couldn't help raising his head, looked at Tamayo, then lowered his head blushing. For him, all that was just wishful thinking after all. As long as I can protect Master Tamayo well. This is also the meaning of his existence in the world. Miss Makomo seems to trust Sir. Tamayo sat down on the rock opposite Sumiyu, put his hand on his cheek, and looked at Makomo who was sleeping next to Sumiyu. She is really asleep. As a member of the ghost killing squad, you should know something about ghost nature, right? In this world, there are not people who believe in ghosts. But most end badly. For example, the Tioni who was still growing up in Mount Fuji, before he was imprisoned in Mount Fuji by Urokodaki Sakanji, his big brother didn't abandon him when he learned that he had become a ghost. He is kept at home. But Tioni couldn't bear the ghost nature, in the end, couldn't bear the ghost's greed for human flesh and blood, and finally ate his big brother with his own hands. Just like she once loved her child and husband so much, but after becoming a ghost, she ate her son and husband with her own hands. Although, everything about her was related to being deceived by Kibutsuji Muzan. But it was he who ate his son and husband. This is an unchangeable fact. Ghosts are terrifying. As the existence of the ghost killing team, it is impossible not to understand. But still so relieved. Most of the people who joined the ghost killing team were persecuted by ghosts during their lifetime, and their long-established happiness was destroyed by ghosts. With ghosts, how can we not be on guard against them? Even, Nezuko in the Demon Slayer anime, after Nezuko turned into a ghost, also put on a muzzle. But Ms. Makomo in front of her was completely unprepared against Mr. This ghost. The white neck was leaning against the face of the gentleman, almost as long as the husband bit it lightly. The warm blood would enter the body along the throat. Not only the warm and delicious blood, but also the fragrant body from Makomo. For ghosts, it is really an extremely good food, and it is an existence that cannot restrain greed. All these are irresistible temptations for ghosts. Does Miss Makomo believe in Mr. This ghost? Her eyes were a bit complicated, thinking of the innocent son who was eaten by herself back then. Before being eaten by herself, he never thought that his mother would eat him. At that time he naively thought that he was hungry. The pain suddenly poured into the atrium. Whenever the memory recalls this point, the heart-wrenching pain almost suffocates her. Her sins cannot be redeemed in a lifetime, and she will go to hell if she dies. Sumiyu raised his head and seemed to see that Tamayo was not in the right state, so he stretched out his hand and patted Tamayo's shoulder. No one can change the facts of the past. There is only one person who can become a ghost like Nezuko and restrain his ghost nature for thousands of years. Therefore, the anime Demon Slayer will show the value of Nezuko even more. It is a kind of suffocation in the deep darkness, just because a ray of light appears in this dark world, and you have to desperately grab it. That's why watching Demon Slayer's anime, ordinary viewers like him can allow Tanjiro to be injured in the battle, but can't watch Nezuko get any damage, and can't see someone who doesn't believe Nezuko. Just like when Fungju Shinazugawa Sanemi stabbed Nezuko when watching Demon Slayer, Pillar Judgment Chapter. At that time, I even wanted to go directly through the screen and go in to kill Fungju Shinazugawa Sanemi. Tamayo raised his head and looked at Sumiyu seriously. If Mr. dares to hurt Ms. Makomo, I, Tamayo, will be the first to let Mr. G go. Tamayo's eyes are serious, and at the same time, with some anticipation. Hundreds of years ago, she finally couldn't bear the ghost nature, and ate her own son and husband. She didn't want Sumiyu to repeat everything she did, the kind of person who wished she would kill herself thousands of times. Unbearable pain. This is one of the reasons why she insisted on killing Kibutsuji Muzan. Don't worry, if one day, I will not be able to bear the ghost nature, I will kill myself first. Sumiyu said very calmly. Even if he becomes a ghost, he still has to act according to his own will. If one day, his humanity is really annihilated, then there is no need for him to exist in this world. The most precious thing for a person is his own nature. This is also the core of being a human being. Tamayo closed his eyes slightly, and looked at Makomo with a hint of envy. A girl like this, will you consider getting married in the future? A question that popped out of nowhere. Even Tamayo himself didn't understand why he asked this question, he just felt that just being together with a ghost is already. Not to mention getting married. Suemyu's eyes were full of crying and laughter. He lowered his head and looked at Makomo's beautiful side face. To be honest, I don't know how to deal with the matter in front of me now. I already have a fiancée. Her name is Tsuyuri Kanao. Tamayo opened his mouth slightly, and looked at Sumiyu in disbelief. He already has a fiancée, and outside. However, looking at Ms. Makomo, who is lying quietly and sleeping next to her husband, I am afraid that no one can refuse such a lovely girl, right? Even a woman like her would probably like a cute girl like Makomo. Although it is very immoral for Mr. to do so, Tamayo would like to ask Mr. Makomo not to let you down. Sumiu nodded. After I go back, I will be free with my fiancée Li Ping. Well, as someone who has experienced it, I suggest you go back and coax your fiancé first, and then, at the right time, check your fiancé's attitude. Tamayo blushed and said his suggestion. Feeling a little hot, Tamayo felt as if he was teaching a man how to cheat on his fiancé. Sumiu nodded, then shook his head again. It should not be used. Tamayo's eyes widened, and he kicked Sumiu with some resentment. After you go back, if you don't confess well, there will never be peace in the garden behind your heart. Sumiu spread her hands helplessly. Is it too early to confess? Why? Because Suyuri Kanao hasn't grown up yet. Sumiu said helplessly. You. Tamayo's eyes widened. Sir, this is. Ever. Isn't this too immoral? This night was extremely long, and Tanjiro never forgot what Sumiu said to him before he left during the day. Even though he felt drowsy, Tanjiro didn't sleep. He walked along the window and looked outside expectantly, looking forward to the figure of Sumiu bringing the doctor over. Rustling. The sound of snow falling from the trees outside. Lying on the bed in his clothes, Tanjiro opened his eyes in a daze. He got up from the bed almost without saying a word. Kamado Takeo rubbed his sleepy eyes, and looked at the big brother strangely. What was the big brother doing up so late? Takeo, sleep well, big brother, go out for a while. Tanjiro patted his brother's head tenderly. Understood, big brother, don't always treat me like a child. Somewhat annoyed, Zushang slapped the big brother off his hand, and then got into the warm bed with his head. Big brother, don't stay outside for a long time, it's night and the weather is very cold, wear more clothes when you go out. No. Tanjiro glanced at his younger brother tenderly, then put on his clothes and went out. Pushing open the door, a gust of cold wind blows and makes Tanjiro shiver unconsciously. Standing at the door, looking around, I didn't see Suemiu's figure. Slightly disappointed. But, what happened to the commotion outside just now? In the past, Tanjiro would not have cared too much about it, but after hearing that there are really evil spirits in this world, and that ghosts really can destroy houses and eat people, Tanjiro felt like a gust of evil wind was generated from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, I felt a panic. Could it be a ghost? What if it is really a ghost? I felt very scared all of a sudden. After all, I was still a child, looking at the darkness outside. I thought about the horror of ghosts in my mind, and in my heart, I couldn't help feeling afraid. Suddenly, as if sensing something behind him, Therapist turned his head abruptly. Is the father? My fearful heart suddenly calmed down. Although my father's body is very weak, it is very difficult to simply walk. As long as his father stood there, Tanjiro felt an inexplicable peace of mind, a very safe feeling. Father, why are you up? Tanjiro stepped forward and supported his father, feeling puzzled at the same time. Kamado Tanjiro gently stroked his son's head, and stared outside with calm eyes. Go, bring the axe from home. Tanjiro was a little puzzled, but he followed his father's advice and brought over the axe used for chopping wood at home. Let's go. Let's go out and kill the things that are approaching the house. Kamado Tanjiro spoke calmly while holding the axe. Tanjiro's face couldn't help changing, and he asked in horror, is it a ghost? Kamado Tanjiro shook his head. Although there is a strange aura pushing that thing, it is not a ghost. Hearing that it was not a ghost, Tanjiro was also relieved, and was about to step forward to help his father, but found that his father had already walked ahead. Before that, the father who was struggling to walk, walked so lightly. Father, Tanjiro hurriedly followed, looking at his father at this moment, his eyes excited. Is my father's illness cured? Looking at his excited son, Kamado Tanjiro shook his head. My illness is not getting better. Hearing that his father's illness was not cured, Tanjiro was a little disappointed, but also a little puzzled. Normally, his father struggled even to walk, and even needed help from others. Now, he was walking with a heavy axe in the deep snow. Such light steps. It's because. Breathe. Kamado Tanjiro patted Tanjiro on the head. My body is already so bad, but I can walk faster than normal people like I am now, and I can do all this. It's because of breathing. Tanjiro, you too, pay attention to breathing. Tanjiro nodded heavily, and began to consciously control his breathing, but he couldn't do it like his father. Tanjiro can't do it now, because Tanjiro has done too many useless movements. The important thing is correct breathing and correct strength, using the smallest movement to exert the maximum strength. In this way, slowly the head will gradually become transparent. Tanjiro began to follow his father's teachings. At the same time, I am also a little puzzled. What his father taught him tonight is more detailed than what he taught Sumyu during the day, even more specific, and more importantly. The good thing is that every point he said is completely in line with himself. They are all his own deficiencies and what he should correct. These things were never mentioned by Suemyu's father during the day. Are you puzzled? Kamado Tanjiro stroked Tanjiro's head. Although, I believe in that ghost, but he is a ghost after all. Beware of a bottle after all. Tanjiro, as the eldest son of the family, in the future, you should bear the burden and responsibility of the family. In the future, protecting your younger brother and younger sister is what Tanjiro has to do. You are the most trustworthy father. Aha. Tanjiro clenched his fists heavily. I will definitely protect my mother, Nezuko, Hanako, Takeo, and Rokuta. So, Tanjiro, you have to improve quickly. Not only is that Oni powerful, but the Oni that comes from the enemy of the adult who inherited the will of our Kamado family is even stronger. You have to hurry up and catch up. I will. Tanjiro nodded heavily. Looking at his sensible son, Kamado Tanjiro's eyes revealed a hint of relief. It just so happens that a sightless thing came near the house, and my father will cover it up for you personally. What is it? The god of fire, Kagura Wu. He said softly. A sharp coldness flashed across his calm eyes at this moment. Next moment Tanjiro found himself being grabbed by the palm of his father. A muffled sound resounded in the courtyard, and Tanjiro was shocked to find that he was being dragged away by his father. The father, who used to struggle to walk, is now more than 10 times faster than the cheetah. The wind was blowing, and the sound of howling wind was almost all around my ears. Looking at the mountains and trees passing by in front of him, Tanjiro was horrified and confused. His father, who had always been sick and weak in his eyes, seemed to be blown down by a gust of wind, and his weak body broke out at such a fast speed. At this moment Kamado Tanjiro just realized. Own father really not ordinary people. Finally, after more than a while, Kamado Tanjiro finally stopped. Tanjiro stopped, gasping for breath. Still breathing calmly, his father was looking ahead with great interest. Tanjiro looked up. Looking forward with some horror, his body took a step back involuntarily, but he seemed to think of something, and hurriedly stood beside his father. Tanjiro looked across in horror. A giant bear standing upright and almost 2 meters tall. Thick shoulders and round waist, dense and long black hair growing all over the body, and pillar-like legs, just standing there gives people a strong sense of deterrence. Father. Tanjiro couldn't help but clench his fists, which reminded him of the rumors about a man-eating giant bear that had been circulating recently. Obviously, it's not a rumor. There is really such a giant bear raging in the mountains and forests. Tanjiro. The calm voice echoed in Kamado Tanjiro's ears. That calm, extremely gentle voice calmed down Tanjiro's nervous heart slightly. Tanjiro couldn't help raising his head, looking at his father. Tanjiro, see clearly. Kamado Tanjiro stroked Tanjiro's head and spoke gently. Tanjiro froze for a moment, then found that his father had already walked towards the giant bear. Ho 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 ho. The giant bear patted his chest, making a muffled sound like beating a drum, as if reminding the little one in front of him that if he stepped forward again, its bear paw like a palm fan could slap you to death. Tanjiro, watch carefully. Kamado Tanjiro turned his head, and spoke gently to Tanjiro who was still in a daze. Tanjiro stared blankly at his father. Ruer's moonlight shone on her father's frail body, her long dark red hair fluttered with the cold wind, and on her left forehead, a faint stripe seemed to flash an inexplicable threat under the moonlight. Looking good. Kamado Tanjiro spoke again. Next moment Tanjiro saw his father move suddenly. Suddenly, the figure disappeared, and in the pitch-black darkness, only a silver light shone, like a sudden thunder in the night, resounding in silence. The silver light burst out, so dazzling that people almost dare not look directly at it. I didn't see the movement of my father swinging the axe clearly, but what I saw was a huge bear's head thrown flying. Tick-tock, the dark red blood dripped down the father's axe, and together with the tick sound of the blood dripping on the ground, there was a thick and dull sound, which was the sound of the giant bear's corpse falling to the ground. Gululu. After losing its head, dark red blood began to flow from the giant bear's neck, instantly dyeing the snow-white ground in blood. Looking at everything in front of him, Tanjiro's eyes were slightly stern. Although his eyes couldn't keep up with his father's movements just now, what is certain is that his father just blinked. Should have scored 2 consecutive answers. Otherwise, with the axe held by my father, it is impossible to completely chop off such a large chest at once, and then let the bear's head fly. The nose sniffed slightly. Just now, when father was moving, the smell on his body did not waver at all. At the moment of moving, there was no fear, no murderous intent. It's the kind of father who exudes the breath of plants as usual. See it? Kamado Tanjiro turned his head and looked at his son. I see. Tanjiro nodded earnestly. At this moment, the figure of his father suddenly became extremely tall in his eyes. It turned out that the father who always thought he was just poor and weak was actually so unusual. Kamado Tanjiro nodded, but his gaze was staring into the dark depths, and the feeling of being spied on slowly disappeared. In the past, Kamado Tanjiro might not have cared too much, but now, he already knows. That prying thing should be Guizu Kibutsuji Muzan. Father. Tanjiro looked at his father, whose expression suddenly froze in a strange way. He was still weak and couldn't detect what was hidden in the darkness. Let's go back. Kamado Tanjiro withdrew his eyes looking into the distance, and stretched out his hand. Tanjiro hastily stepped forward to catch his father's hand, and held him up. He could clearly feel that his father's body had weakened a little after tonight's actions. If the husband didn't bring the doctor he mentioned come here, I am afraid that my father will not live for many days. This is a sudden feeling, but it emerges in Tanjiro's heart very clearly. In the depths of the pitch-black darkness, a man wearing a white cap and black Western-style clothing stared at Kamado Tanjiro, who was being helped away by Tanjiro with his scarlet eyes open. He could feel that Kamado Tanjiro's axe that killed the giant bear just now should have been specially shown to him. A deterrent? Kibutsuji Muzan opened his mouth and let out a slightly low-pitched sneer. As Kibutsuji Muzan opened his mouth, countless fangs rolled in his throat. The forest is cold and pressing. Looks like it was discovered. He said softly, staring at the back of Kamado Tanjiro with his scarlet eyes. Just now, the figure of the axe wielded by this man made the terrifying figure deep in his memory suddenly appear in his mind. That person's sword, like the sun back then, is still engraved in the depths of his soul, and it reminds him of a feeling of fear from the soul. Only for thousands of years, there has been only one such person, and there will be no more. The person in front of him is considered very strong among human beings. Even among the ghost killing team, the number 1, pillars, may not be the opponent of this person in front of him. But in his eyes, Kamado Gang is still weak. With a shot, he should have easily killed Kamado Tanjiro. But the figure of the man engraved deep in his mind back then, the shadow that had brought him, made him choose cautiously to continue waiting. After all scarlet eyes stared at the back of Kamado Tanjiro, the other party's vitality was passing, and he became weaker and weaker. In almost 3 months, this person will die due to exhaustion of vitality. Just be patient for a while. Kibutsuji Muzan murmured in a low voice, looking at the sky with his hands on his back. At this moment, a comet passed by, flashing an extremely bright light in the dark night sky. Even if it is as strong as Jiguyuan, how long can the short lifespan of human beings last to shine? And when the light fades away, this world will return to darkness again. Ji Guo Yuan Yi, on the front, I can't defeat you. But it also failed to really defeat me and kill me. Even if you can shine like the sun for a moment, after a short afterglow, it will belong to the world ruled by me, Kibutsuji Muzan. A time of ghosts. I will gain immortality, and all the things in this world will crouch under my feet. Kamado Tanjiro thought that his actions were a deterrent to Kibutsuji Muzan, who was secretly watching all this. Unexpectedly, it almost put the Kamado family in immediate danger of being wiped out. Kamado Tanjiro thinks that the spying Kibutsuji Muzan dare not do anything to the Kamado family because of his existence. But in fact, it is not. That's the only person Kibutsuji Muzan really cares about. It was the one who swung a sword like the sun at him hundreds of years ago. It is the inner fear of that person. For Kibutsuji Muzan, who is greedy for life and afraid of death, he chooses to take a little risk to destroy that person's inheritance, or choose not to take any risk at all, and wait for the person who inherits that person's inheritance to really die, and then do it. 2 options for Kibutsuji Muzan. It hardly takes much thought. For Kibutsuji Muzan, as long as cannot walk under the sun, the shadow of that person in his heart will never be eliminated. No matter how much you want to destroy everything related to that person, as long as you find something about that person, before doing it, you will always hesitate and confirm again and again to ensure that nothing goes wrong before you do it. This is the demon belonging to Kibutsuji Muzan. Also the shadow of Kibutsuji Muzan's life. The dark night slowly dissipated, and as the sun slowly rose from the east, warm sunlight began to shine on the earth. As the warm sunlight fell between the corners of his eyes, Makomo slowly woke up, and 2 boxes lying quietly on the ground came into view. Standing up unconsciously, she stretched lazily. The girl's graceful curve exuded an inexplicable charm under the warm sunlight. His eyes fell on 2 boxes, which should be Ms. Tamayo and Yushiru. What about Shepherd? The eyes search around unconsciously. But he couldn't find it, which made Makomo a little anxious. He jumped to a huge rock with light steps, tiptoed his little feet, and looked around. Soon, it was discovered that the river not far ahead had changed. He turned his head, glanced at the 2 boxes on the ground, hesitated slightly, and hurried towards the river. The clear river flows. A boy was washing by the sink. For Su-Mu these days, walking during the day is almost always wrapped in thick clothes. Even if the ghost's body does not sweat, the air cannot flow, and the body has long been contaminated with a lot of dust. In addition, in the previous life, I was used to taking a bath every day. After traveling to this world for so many days, I really feel a little uncomfortable without taking a bath. Then he found that there happened to be a clear stream nearby, and it happened that Tamayo and Yushiru had already hid in the box, while Mikomo was still asleep. Obviously it would take some time before he woke up, and there was no danger around, so I have a plan to wash the house first. It feels like the aura of Mu is in front. Mikomo's small nose was slightly wrinkled, and his gaze was looking into the distance. Through the lush woods, he faintly felt a change by the river. Early in the morning, without any notice, I ran here secretly. Does Mu have any ulterior secrets? These thoughts flooded my mind unconsciously. Then walk lightly like a kitten. Taking a sneak peek, Mikomo looked over with curiosity. Then the little face instantly turned red, like a cooked prawn. Hastily retracted his head, tiptoeing, as if he had done something wrong. He moved back gently. Mikomo now just wants to run away before Mu finds him. If that bad ghost Mu finds out, I don't know how to make fun of myself. It's just that I just took a few steps back, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Look up. The figure of a familiar boy. The other party was slowly fastening the belt on his body, lowering his head, looking down at the girl who wanted to leave quietly like a cat that stole a fishy smell. Mikomo, what are you doing? Su-Mu looked at Mikomo with a serious expression on his face. The sudden sound made Mikomo shrink his head immediately in fright, turned his head away with a blushing face, and said unnaturally, the scenery here is pretty good. Then Mikomo found that his little ears were being grabbed. You didn't learn well at a young age, but now you learn to peek? Su-Mu directly reached out and pinched Mikomo's little ear. No, you're spitting blood. Mikomo blushed and widened his eyes to strengthen his momentum. Like an angry little tiger. But as the boy's golden eyes fell, they suddenly turned into an obedient kitten. I just want to come over and have a look. To see what Mu does. I really didn't expect Mu to take a shower. After all, who would have thought that ghosts would bathe during the day? Mikomo explained in a low voice. Su-Mu smiled and patted Mikomo's little head. I didn't ask you to explain. Besides, even if you were seen, it's nothing. Mikomo nodded in agreement at first, but immediately, he felt something was wrong. What do you mean it's okay even if you see it? You talk nonsense. Even if you were seen, it's nothing. Is Mikomo a girl who can look at it casually, or, do you think Mikomo? The voice suddenly became weak, and some could not continue. Give you. Before Mikomo could say anything, Su-Mu handed over a grilled chicken drumstick. Mikomo froze for a moment. The chicken was beaten before taking a bath, and it was roasted by the way. Su-Mu smiled. After all, Mikomo is different from him. He is a ghost, so he does not need to eat, but for a girl like Mikomo who is in the developmental period, nutrition is indispensable. Mikomo blushed slightly, but still raised his hand to take it. After a little hesitation, he opened his white and tender teeth and took a bite of the chicken. It's delicious. Happy eyes narrowed. But immediately, Mikomo realized that the situation was wrong, and immediately took the grilled chicken behind his back, and looked at Su-Mu very seriously. You. This bad ghost, don't make fun of me. What happened just now? You act as if nothing happened. It is good. Su-Mu said dotingly, but. Su-Mu spoke suddenly, then stretched out her hand, and gently smoothed the messy strands of hair on Mikomo's forehead. If you grow your hair longer, it will reach your waist, it will be good. What good is it to have long hair? Mikomo grumbled. A girl with long hair reaching her waist means that she is almost an adult and ready to marry. Su-Mu's golden eyes stared at Mikomo, and said words with unknown meaning. The girl's face turned red all of a sudden. I don't want to talk to you, a badass. Mikomo ran forward, but after walking a few steps, he turned his head and looked at Su-Mu who was still in place. Idiot, what are you doing there? We are going on the road. The girl glared at the fool, and unconsciously held the black hair scattered on her chest with her little hand. In fact, long hair is still pretty good. The sun is not hot, but very gentle, as soft as a lover brushing against someone's face. Su-Mu wears the same black hat as Mikomo, and walks on the road with a huge box on his back. The two stood shoulder to shoulder, talking and laughing from time to time. Occasionally, Sumiu would say a few teasing words, which would always make Makomo's delicate little face flush slightly, making her look particularly cute. Miu still spouts some strange nonsense as always. Makomo pursed his mouth and looked resentful. If Miu is not a ghost, but a human being, with words like Miu, I'm afraid it will stir up the hearts of many girls. The girl's tone was obviously pancitric. After all, Miu also said some words to Kochu Shinobu's sister when she was in MT. Now, let's talk about Makomo again. Really, as if Makomo didn't know anything about it. Or, in the eyes of Miu, Makomo is just a silly and sweet girl. Is it a silly girl? Although I also like to listen to it, but like Miu, it is always a little too bothering. Hearing Makomo's complaint, Miu slightly turned her head to look at him. Because I'm a ghost, it's useless even if I pull too many girls' hearts. In this world, only a beautiful, kind, and lovely girl like Makomo doesn't care about my identity as a ghost. She is willing to hurt me, love me, and like me. In the future, she is more willing to knit clothes, cook for me, and even to give birth to a child. You are talking nonsense. Makomo's face turned red, and he slapped Sumiu angrily, and said in embarrassment, whoever wants to give birth to you will give birth to you, I really don't want to. Ha ha. Seeing the girl's blushing face, Sumiu also smiled happily. Likes to make jokes about Makomo more and more. However, as I stayed with myself for a long time, I gradually discovered that Mazo's personality seemed to become more and more cheerful. Also more youthful. This made him very happy. After all, this is what Makomo should look like at this age, when he is young, and should be full of youthful beauty. Lively, cheerful, happy, carefree. Soon, the Kamado family's house appeared in front of them. Outside the door, Tanjiro was waiting anxiously, seeing the arrival of Sumiu and Makomo, also showing excitement. Almost ran over at a trot. Gentlemen. Quickly running in front of Sumiu, Tanjiro immediately bent down and shouted respectfully. Sumiu glanced at Tanjiro's body slightly, and a trace of surprise flashed in her golden eyes. Just now, if she read correctly, Tanjiro's breathing has been kept very calm after running this distance. Before Tanjiro ran here, he was afraid that he was out of breath. Have you learned to breathe yet? V? %. Sumiu murmured, and had to secretly admire, she really deserves to be the protagonist of Demon Slayer, this talent is really amazing. Tanjiro, what happened? Makomo next to him showed a bit of curiosity, seeing that Tanjiro's expression was obviously a little bit wrong. Father seems to be dying. Tanjiro said anxiously, and couldn't help grabbing Suemiu's sleeve with his hand, staring at him with his ruby-like eyes. Mr. promised to bring a doctor to my father. The tone was obviously complaining. Sumiu was slightly silent. Hearing Tanjiro complaining about his lover, Makomo's delicate little face showed obvious displeasure. Although she usually likes to bully Miu, and also likes to see how Miu suffers from her, but it is not so good for others. Tanjiro, are you blaming Miu, me? Tanjiro opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say, so he could only lower his head. I'm sorry, it's my father's illness that made Tanjiro a little at a loss. Take me to Mr. Tanjiro. Sumiu patted Tanjiro on the shoulder. His heart was a little strange. When Kamado Tanjiro left yesterday, although his body was weak, he was still in good condition. Why? His condition suddenly worsened in just one night. It is good. With Suemiu's hand on his shoulder, Fahiro's flustered heart calmed down a lot. To the room. Just discovered almost all the Kamado family gathered in front of the ward. Kamado was busy with his head hanging down, obviously absent-minded. Nezuko sat on the side of the ward, holding his father's hand with red eyes. Takeo, Shigeru, and Hanako also lost their usual playfulness and sat quietly. An air of sadness pervades the Kamado family. Although Kamado Tanjiro has been sick and unable to work these years, if it is really counted, it is almost a burden for this poor family. However, for the Kamado family, Kamado Tanjiro is the backbone of the family. It is the pillar of the family. Although the pillar is a bit decayed now, it is still the pillar after all. And as the backbone, the pillars are about to be stepped on, and the feeling of being at a loss almost made the family lose their minds in an instant. Sumiu stepped forward quickly and took Kamado Tanjiro's hand from Nezuko's. According to Kamado Tanjiro's pulse, he was obviously much weaker. Slightly frowned. Carry Tanjiro-san to a place in the shadow of the room. He said to Tanjiro behind him. Tanjiro was slightly puzzled. Why did you carry it to the shade? The shade looks damp, and for my father's condition. Just do it. Sumiu looked at Tanjiro lightly. Big brother, do as you say. Just when Tanjiro was slightly hesitant, Nezuko next to him raised his head and said to the big brother, After all, Mr. is a good man, and he will not do anything bad to father, since Mr. wants to lift father into the shadows. Ding has a reason for Mr. Hearing this, Tanjiro screamed, inwardly ashamed. He doubted Mr. just now, it was really unreasonable. He hastily followed Su Emu's advice. At this time, Su Mu also stood up, and said to Kamado, e.g. Please take the child out of the house, we have to treat Mr. Tanjiro, and there can't be too many people in the house. It is good. Kamado Kuiji nodded hastily, and hurriedly led the son and the girl outside. Leave only one person in the room, and everyone else can go out, including Ms. Nezuko. No, I'm staying. Nezuko shook his head stubbornly. Stay here, and something terrible will happen to Ms. Nezuko later. He looked at Nezuko, and said with concern, it's a terrible thing. Nezuko murmured, pinching the pink kimono involuntarily with her small hands, but immediately, the girl seemed to have made up her mind, and raised her head, revealing her delicate face. A pair of ruby-like eyes looked at Su Mu seriously. Nezuko, don't be afraid. Su Mu narrowed her golden eyes. The ruby-like eyes are still so firm under the gaze of his golden eyes. Since that's the case, then Ms. Nezuko can stay, but, no matter what happens, please don't panic, Ms. Nezuko. Okay. Nezuko nodded emphatically. As Kamado Aoi left with the child, only Nezuko, Tanjiro, Mikomo, Su Mu, and Kamado Tanjiro were left in the room soon. Of course, there are also huge boxes carried by Su Mu and Mikomo. Is there anything I can do to help you? Seeing that big brother Tanjiro was carefully carrying his father to the shadow, Nezuko also asked unconsciously. Help your sister next to you take the box off your back. He smiles. Okay. Nezuko immediately ran over and began to help Mikomo carry the big box together, looking at the box with ruby-like eyes curiously. Sister, this box is so big. What's in it? Nezuko raised his head and looked at Mikomo suspiciously. Mikomo lowered his head and looked at Nezuko's immature face, hesitating slightly. After all, the things on his back were not suitable for a girl like Nezuko to hear. For ordinary people, ghosts are scary things, not to mention, Nezuko is still so young. Knowing these things, will it cause any bad effects? Tell her, she is ready. Su Mu put down the suitcase she was carrying, and spoke very plainly. Mikomo nodded, then leaned slightly, bent over, gently stroked Nezuko's small head with his small hands, and said in a big sister's protective voice, Nezuko-chan, I told you what's in the box, but you don't be too scared, they won't hurt the cute Nezuko-chan. Nezuko nodded emphatically. This box on my sister's back is filled with ghosts. Mikomo spoke to Nezuko as gently as possible. But when hearing the word, ghost, Ji-do-zi instinctively took a step back. Ghosts are scary things, even adults are afraid of ghosts, let alone a little girl like Nezuko. Mikomo thought he would spend a little time coaxing Nezuko, but after the initial fear, Nezuko clenched his fists, and a hint of determination appeared in his eyes. Sister Mikomo, open the box, Nezuko is not afraid. Mikomo was taken aback for a moment, then became curious. Nezuko, aren't you afraid of the ghost in the box? Sister Mikomo said that the ghost in the box will not harm Nezuko, so don't be afraid, Nezuko said seriously. What a lovely girl. I couldn't help but pinch Nezuko's little nose. This girl's mouth is so sweet, I really like it. In that case, I'll open it, Mikomo said softly. Move the box to the shade. With the opening of the box, Yushiru curled up and walked out of the box. Although the room was very dark and there was no sunlight, Yushiru still felt a little uncomfortable with the current environment. After all, it is daytime. Although there is no masculine light around, the warm and strong breath from the light will still make the ghost itself disgusted and feel particularly uncomfortable. Extremely hungry. I want to drink the warm and bright red blood to quench my thirst. The scarlet eyes turned and fixed on the weakest Nezuko. Nezuko was frightened and took several steps back until Su Mu held her hand. It's okay. This ghost won't hurt you. A gentle voice came from Su Mu's mouth. Nezuko raised his head, his ruby-like pupils met the pair of golden pupils under the bamboo hat, and nodded heavily. Seeing Nezuko seem to relax, Su Mu also started to open the box she was carrying. Nezuko stood aside, watching quietly, raised his little hand unconsciously, and put it in front of his eyes, the hand of the big brother just now. Dot was so cold. It's like a dead body without temperature, because of. Nezuko's ruby-like eyes looked at Su Mu's thin clothes. Is it because the clothes are too thin? If I have time, I must make a piece of clothing for my husband. Wearing such thin clothes on such a cold day, is it very cold for 10 walks? Su Mu doesn't know what Nezuko is thinking at the moment. If she knew what Nezuko was thinking, she might just laugh helplessly. After all, Being a ghost is not the same as being a human. Naturally, there is no human temperature. Ghosts are cold-blooded species. As the box opened, Tamayo also walked out of the box. Her hair was a little messy and her skin was fair, but it could be seen that this was a very gentle woman. Nezuko's eyes widened. What a beautiful sister. Although Makomo is also very beautiful, Makomo is still just a girl after all. Although she will definitely grow into the most beautiful flower in the future, compared with mature flowers, she lacks the charm of a young woman. Tamayo opened his eyes and looked at the surrounding environment, feeling slightly uncomfortable. Sister, you are so beautiful. Nezuko couldn't help but speak. Tamayo was slightly taken aback. Looking at Nezuko standing in front of her, the purest compliment from a girl warmed her heart a lot. The little sister is also very beautiful. Naturally, she stepped forward and pinched Nezuko's little face. In the future, the little sister will definitely be very juicy and beautiful, and she will be a famous little beauty in all places. Nezuko's face was slightly red, and he held Tamayo's hand unconsciously. My sister's hand is so cold, it's as cold as my husband's. I'll cover my sister to keep her warm. Tamayo was taken aback for a moment, then turned to look at Sumiyu. Didn't he tell the little girl that he was a ghost? Makomo stepped forward, Nezuko pulled away, and whispered in Nezuko's ear. She is also a ghost just like Yushiru. Nezuko looked at Tamayo with eyes as beautiful as red jade. Such a beautiful sister, is also a ghost. Turning her head again, she looked at Yushiru. It was easy to tell if this blue-faced man was a ghost, but a beautiful woman like Ms. Tamayo could be a ghost, which she couldn't feel. Miss Makomo is right. I am also a ghost. The body temperature of a ghost is cold, you can't keep warm. She looked at Nezuko tenderly. This girl is very kind, and she liked this little girl at first sight. Okay, Miss Tamayo, let's stop talking nonsense. I told you the purpose of bringing you here. It's very simple. Please help Mr. Tanjiro. Sumiyu directly interrupted the greetings of several people and said to Tamayo. Tamayo nodded, came to the side of Kamado Tanjiro, looked at the shadow where Kamado was in, and nodded slightly. It seemed that he took special care of her. Stretch out your hand and take Yilong's pulse. He also looked at the pattern on Tanjiro's forehead and was already touched. For so many years, she has only seen one swordsman who can activate the stripes. The same one from hundreds of years ago. It is the one who once stood in the realm. The world where the original swordsman arrived. No wonder Mr. asked me to come here for treatment. At this moment, Tamayo already had a clear decision in his heart. How about it? After Tamayo's diagnosis was over, Sumiyu couldn't help asking. Both Tanjiro and Nezuko looked nervously at Tamayo. Tanjiro's condition is very serious. I'm afraid he only has 3 months to live. Tamayo looked serious. Hearing this, Tanjiro and Nezuko's legs became weak, and tears almost came out of their eyes. With Ms. Tamayo's medical skills, there's nothing I can do, right? Suemyu's eyes fell on Tamayo's confident face, and his heart moved slightly. Of course there is a way. Tamayo laughed, looking at Tanjiro and Nezuko with red eyes. It can be seen that they love their father very much. Hearing Tamayo's words, Tanjiro and Nezuko raised their heads suddenly, looking at Tamayo expectantly. I am confident that Mr. Tanjiro will be cured, but... Speaking of this, Tamayo hesitated. Just what? As long as Tanjiro can do it, I will do it with my life. Nezuko too. Nezuko also echoed the big brother's words. Speak. Miss Tamayo, you don't need to hide any concerns. Sumiyu is also open. I need to perform an operation on Mr. Tanjiro, and may have to dissect Mr. Tanjiro's body. Splitting? Tanjiro frowned. It's like cutting a person's body. Tamayo said briefly. After listening for a while, whether it was Tanjiro, Nezuko, or Makomo next to him, their faces turned pale. This is not like slaughtering a pig. Dissection of the body, this appalling treatment. Tanjiro obviously had a hard time accepting it. Now, the era we live in is the Taisho period. During this period, technology from the West began to spread throughout the country. Some cities have also begun to introduce Western technology, including medicine, such as surgical treatment in medicine. But this kind of medicine is not accepted by the public at present. The origin of this technology is ***, which is a country full of magic and dragons. Even Hua Tuo, who proposed craniotomy in that country, was not accepted when he proposed to perform craniotomy for Cao Cao in this way. What's more, this barbarian land. I agree, Ms. Tamayo, please perform the operation. Looking at Tanjiro and Nezuko with pale faces, Sumiyu made the decision for them. In their world, surgery is considered a very routine treatment method. Of course, there are still risks. Using this surgery for treatment requires great consideration of the surgeon's medical skills. Obviously, as the top medical practitioner in this country, Tamayo undoubtedly has this qualification. After all, in order to get rid of the curse of Kibutsuji Muzan, he did not know how many times he modified his body with drugs. But Tanjiro is still a bit unacceptable, thinking of cutting his father's body open with a knife. That weird treatment method is simply. If you have other methods, you can also try. Su-Mu just glanced at Tanjiro lightly. At this time, there is no need to consider the opinions of Tanjiro's family, just make up your own mind for them. After all, it takes a long process for new things to be accepted by people in a short period of time, but it doesn't take that long to consider the psychology of the Tanjiro family. Ms. Tamayo, please perform the operation. He looked at Tamayo and said seriously. It is good. Tamayo nodded and looked at Su-Mu unconsciously. He proposed such a treatment method, but the other party was not shocked, which made her a little confused. After all, this kind of treatment is extremely rare even in hospitals in bustling cities. However, the operation process may be very long. During this period, it cannot be disturbed. Is the current situation allowed? Tamayo raised his doubts. Here, it belongs to the area monitored by Kibutsuji Muzan. As a ghost, he can feel the aura of the same kind that exists nearby, but these auras are hidden and can only be felt vaguely. Hearing Tamayo's words, Su-Mu frowned slightly. This is the place where Kibutsuji Muzan monitors. During the day, with sunshine, all ghosts retreat. But when the sun goes down and loses the warmth of the sun, it will be a night walk of ghosts. If I and Tamayo appear near here, I don't know if Kibutsuji Muzan will notice. But there is no doubt that once discovered, it is a very dangerous thing. Although unwilling to admit it, it has to be said that the current Kibutsuji Muzan's strength is still too strong. Of course, they can choose to move in due to take Kamado 10. But this choice is obviously not very good. After all, Kamado's family has been a woman and child for a long time, and they live in this remote mountainous area. Without good means of transportation, they may not be able to travel very far in a single day. Once in the evening, all ghosts walk around in the night. At that time, we will still face. He walked to the window a little restlessly. The warm sunlight shone on his bamboo hat, and the golden eyes under the hat gradually became firm. Miss Tamayo is willing to take some risks? He asked calmly. Please tell me, sir. Maybe at night, we will face Kibutsuji Muzan, but I promise that I will do my best to protect you and not put you in danger. He said softly. What? Tamayo didn't answer yet, but Yushiru next to him couldn't sit still, and jumped up suddenly. Facing that ghost now, given how much that ghost hates Master Tamayo, I'm afraid it will be impossible to escape. How could you trap Master Tamayo in your life? How about such a dangerous situation? Su-Mu ignored Yushiru, because the real decision maker is Tamayo, no matter what Yushiru will say, as long as Tamayo agrees, no matter how reluctant Yushiru is, he can only agree. I would like to believe, sir. Tamayo just said very calmly. For hundreds of years, Su-Mu is the most special ghost he has ever seen. In Su-Mu, she saw the hope of defeating Kibutsuji Muzan, Shadow of Man. Such a person is trustworthy, and she is willing to take risks. Then please Ms. Tamayo treat Tanjiro as soon as possible. Ms. Tamayo doesn't have to worry about other things, she just needs to cure Mr. Wang Lang. He bent slightly and begged Tamayo. Tamayo will not fail, Mr. Entrusted. Tamayo's eyes were firm, and at the same time, he turned his head and looked at Yushiru. Get ready for the operation, and we will start the operation. At the same time, I looked at Tanjiro and Nezuko. Please avoid both of them. Nezuko and Tanjiro shook their heads firmly. I want to watch your surgery with my own eyes. Looking at the boys' and girls' firm eyes, Tamayo hesitated slightly, finally nodded and said, yes, but no matter what happens, please don't disturb me, and don't stop me, because, whether it's a craniotomy or a broken heart, are all necessary for the operation. The scene is bloody, the two children of Mr. Tanjiro may not be able to bear it. We can bear it, as long as it is to save my father. Tanjiro said firmly. Nezuko next to him also nodded. Tamayo didn't say anything, but began to order Yushiru to prepare surgical tools. For her, Tanjiro was certain to be treated well, but such an operation almost involved the transformation of the body, and even she had to go all out. While Tamayo was operating on Tanjiro, Su-Mu opened the door and walked out. Mikomo followed in his footsteps. Well, how's the situation? Kamado Kuiji stepped forward unconsciously, holding Su-Mu's hand. His eyes were full of worry. Mr. Tanjiro is undergoing treatment, and it may take a lot of time. During this time, E.g. Aunt, please take care of Takeo, Shigeru, and Hanako, and don't let them disturb the treatment inside. I will. Kamado Aoi nodded, although it was strange that Sumiyu and Makomo had left, and only Nezuko and Tanjiro were left in the room, but he didn't ask any more questions, and chose to believe him, followed Suemyu's idea, and hurriedly started to take care of the children. Looking away from the figure of Kamado Kuiji, Sumiyu blew his whistle, looked to the sky, and waited quietly for something. Makomo naturally stood next to Sumiyu, and the pair fell where Sumiyu looked. A crow flew by flapping its wings. It is the tool used by the Demon Slayer squad for communication. What's the matter, sir? The crow landed on Suemyu's shoulder, tilted his head, and looked at Sumiyu. Please tell Yubayashiki Kagaya that Kibutsuji Muzan will appear, and ask him to quickly send the ghost killing team to support. Maybe this is the opportunity to kill Kibutsuji Muzan. The raven flew away. Sumiyu stood at the same spot, watching the back of the crow flapping its wings and leaving. His eyes were slightly condensed. As far as he is concerned, this time is probably the third danger he has faced in his life. The first time was when I just became a ghost. The second time was when I met the Kochu sisters shortly after I became a ghost. I finally saved my life and got acquainted with the Kochu sisters. But this time obviously it's not that easy anymore. Of course, he could choose to escape, but he didn't want this choice. Turning her head, she looked at Makomo, who was quietly standing beside her. I hope you can leave now. This is true and false. Makomo just pursed his lips and shook his head. Nothing was said. The footsteps are still standing firmly behind him. Looking at Makomo's state at the moment, Sumiyu already understood the other party's determination. I really didn't expect that I, a ghost, could be so trusted by a person. Sumiyu shrugged slightly, with a bit of self-mockery. Even though he has become a ghost, he always remembers his identity as a human being in his heart. The soft body hugged him tightly from behind. Please stop talking about ghosts. The girl's voice sounded a bit annoyed. No matter what Mew looks like in other people's minds, but, at least, in Makomo's mind, no matter what, Jung is that very annoying, pregnant ghost. Although it is still a ghost, the bad ghost and ghost in the girl's mouth do not mean the same thing. Under the bamboo hat, the golden pupils drooped slightly. The girl's little hand held his hand at some point. So firm. This is something the girl already knows in her heart. If she likes a ghost, she may encounter it, which is far more difficult than she imagined. Kamado Aoi led Takeo, Shigeru, and Hanako not far away, quietly watching the pair of embracing men and women. Mom, sister and big brother seem to be hugging each other? Sister seems to be kissing big brother. Kamado Hanako grabbed her mother's clothes and looked at that place curiously with her pretty eyes. Children don't want to see what adults do. A smile appeared on Kamado Iji's face, and then led the children to a nearby place, trying not to disturb this loving couple. In the snow. The boys and girls embraced each other. The wind and snow stopped at some point. Their eyes met each other, and they could almost smell each other's clear breathing. If time can stay forever, perhaps, it is also very beautiful. Makomo stretched out his hand, helped Mew tidy up his clothes, and patted the dust that didn't exist on the clothes. Animal husbandry. The little hands straightened the collar of Mew, just like a little wife tidying up the clothes of a husband who is traveling far away. The girl looked at Sumiyu seriously. Makomo, it won't be a burden for Mew. Sumiyu shook his head. For him, Makomo will never be a burden. This is something he knows in his heart. Makomo stretched out his hand and held Mew hand tightly. Similarly, Makomo will not let Mew walk in the dark alone. The girl's words were soft, but with inexplicable firmness. It represents the path that Makomo will take. No matter what Mew becomes in the future, Makomo will be with him, even if he walks in darkness. If Mew really loses his humanity and turns into a man-eating evil spirit, she will stop him. At that time, she would kill Mew and commit suicide. If she couldn't kill Mew, she would be the first to let Mew eat it. The raven fell and landed in front of a window in Tang Chishan. The sickly man who was sitting in front of the window looking at the wisteria flowers looked up at the raven and listened to the message the raven conveyed. The next second, the weak Yubayashiki Kagaya stood up abruptly. Kibutsuji Muzan appeared. The chance to kill Kibutsuji Muzan. Yubayashiki Kagaya murmured almost sickly. A flush of excitement appeared on his pale face, but he quickly regained his composure. Looking at the one who sent the message of the raven. Animal husbandry, the ghost? Yubayashiki Kagaya narrowed his eyes slightly. Could it be a conspiracy? As the leader of the ghost killing squad, he is a man of great vision. Over the years, in addition to working hard to grow the ghost slaying squad, he has also worked hard to find allies. For example, Miss Tamayo. But the more I get to know Kibutsuji Muzan, the more I feel the horror of ghosts and the weakness of people, and even despair. But in the end, Confidence was strengthened. This generation of maternity houses can't defeat Kibutsuji Muzen, then the next generation. If the next generation can't, then the next generation. As long as the maternity houses still exist, there will always be opportunities. But these are always illusory. Now, news of a chance to kill Kibutsuji Muzen from a ghost whose trust has only just been built makes him elusive. Send a signal. No matter what kind of tasks are performed outside, all the pillars will gather to discuss matters. The ravens flew in all directions. The Rengoku family, Rengoku Mojiro, was drinking, and was slightly taken aback when he saw the raven that suddenly flopped in front of the windowsill. Since the death of his wife, he resigned from his position as Yenju, and stayed at home. He even drank his worries every day, and even ignored the matters related to the Kyojiru brothers. No meddling. It was his son, Kyojiru, who killed the second of the lower strings who had been defeated by him, and succeeded in succeeding him as Yanzu. Rengoku Mojiro would not be involved in the normal Demon Slayer squad. He had already given up hope of defeating Kibutsuji Muzen. Standing up, he picked up the dust-covered Nichiren blades. At this moment, his whole body was like a scorching sun, and the dust-covered Nichiren blades also seemed to be rising. Pushing the door open with him was his son Rengoku Kyojiru. Looking at his father who picked up the Nichiren blades again, Rengoku Kyojiru couldn't help showing excitement in his eyes. Father, Rengoku Kyojiru looked at his father excitedly. Although it's boring, and although neither of us father and son can achieve great things, since it is entrusted by the maternity house, I will try. Rengoku Mojiro just glanced at his son indifferently. Although I only got such a hasty response, Rengoku Kyojiru still felt the heartfelt excitement, and my whole heart seemed to be burning like a raging fire. This time, I must perform well in front of my father. Tang Chishan, Shueiju, and Yorokodaki Sakanji received the breath of the raven, silently put on the Tengu mask, and gently stroked the Nichiren blades in their hands. Although the old man is old, the precious sword is not old. Choke. The Nichiren blades were unsheathed, and it was difficult for the man with the sword to open his eyes. In the house of Yu Sui's family, Yu Sui Tengen, the pillar of sound, bids farewell to his wife at home, and walks out the door with a sword in hand. A mountain range. A short, old man with a cane, a big scar on his face, and a prosthetic right foot silently glanced at Kaigaku, who was training, Breath of Thunder, and only knew the Breath of Thunder, Agatsuma Zenitsu. It was the former, Nararu, Kuwajima Jigoru. After he received the message from the letter Crow, a smile could not help showing on his old face. I didn't expect that when the master would still use the old man. Kochu Kanae, who was tracking the traces of the Eternal Bliss cult, raised his pink and purple eyes. There was a smile on the girl's face. That ghost, what the hell are you doing? Pillar of Rock, Hamejima Kiyome folded his hands together and shed tears while reciting scriptures. After a long time, I raised my head suddenly, and the originally blind eyes seemed to burst out with a sharp light. Is there any chance of killing Kibutsuji Muzen? Tangshi Mountain, on the mountainside, wisteria flowers are in full bloom here. All the way without stopping, the busy pillars gathered here. When the Lord, Yubayashiki Kagaya, Rock Pillar, Hamejima Kiyome. Style, Kochu Kanae, Water Column, Yorokodaki Sakanji. Former Naruto, Kuwajima Jigoru. Former Yenju, Rengoku Mojiro and, present Yenju, Rengoku Kyojiru. Pillar of Sound, Yu Sui Tengen, Shaju, Tokito Muichiru. Wind Pillar, Shinazugawa Sanemi, Snake Column, Iguro Obanai. Love Pillar, Kanroji Mitsuri. All the pillars are gathered in one place, which is rare in the history of the Ghost Slayer squad. When the Lord, Yubayashiki Kagaya looked at everyone. Have you read my letter? Namo Amitabha, Yenju, Hamejima Kiyome chanted the Buddha's name before speaking. Actually, it's hard for me to believe a message from a ghost. I, like Lord Hamejima Kiyome, cannot believe a message from a ghost. Wind Pillar, Shinazugawa Sanemi spoke at the same time, while clenched his fists, his eyes were bloodshot. I am very interested in the ghost who conveyed the message. When I see him, I really want to kill him. In fact, even if the master has informed him about the Mu, it is still impossible for the Wind Column, Shinazugawa Sanemi to recognize the 10 ghosts. Ghost, it's unbelievable. Current Flame Pillar, Rengoku Kyojiru also spoke, and at the same time, couldn't help but glanced at his father next to him. Looking at the scene in front of him, when the Lord, Yubayashiki Kagaya was slightly silent. I believe in Mu, Kochu Kanae, who just became a style, stood up, and the colorful butterfly pattern feathers were blowing gently with the wind. What if that ghost deceived us? Former Flame Pillar, Rengoku Mojiro said faintly. The eyes of all the pillars could not help but fall on Kochu Kanae. The huge pressure made Kochu Kanae's white skin involuntarily covered with a fine layer of sweat. If it is really because of my belief that the ghost killing team has suffered irreparable losses, Kanae is willing to commit suicide and apologize. Thinking of Mew, a ghost that was different in her eyes, Kochu Kanae finally said firmly, "In my eyes, Mew is different from other ghosts. Mew is different from other ghosts. He can't eat people, he has a gentle personality, he is a Namo Amitabha." A Buddhist horn sounded, interrupting Kochu Kanae's words, but it was Yenju. Hamejima Kiyome put his hands together, and after reciting a scripture, he said slowly, "Ghosts are cunning and hard to trust, especially our enemies are still Kibutsuji Muzan, sometimes, trusts and only hurts himself." At this moment, Hamejima Kiyome couldn't help but think about things that happened a long time ago. When he was young, he was a monk in a temple that took in some orphan children and treated them as his family. But one day, an evil spirit struck, and Hamejima Kiyome hoped that the children would not panic and go to hide, but in order to protect the blind Hamejima Kiyome, the children were killed when they went out to find weapons, except for the 4-year-old girl Shadai. In the end, all the children died except for the 4-year-old girl Shadai. In order to save the 4-year-old girl Shadai, he fights with ghosts, and Hamejima Kiyome fights with them. Hammered the head of the ghost with a human body, and finally made it disappear into dust after dawn. But in the end, Hamejima Kiyome almost gave up his life in exchange for not being thanked by Shadai, but Shadai accused him of being the murderer of the children in front of the adults who rushed over, making him feel unjust and almost sentenced to death. Since then, Hamejima Kiyome has had a knot in his heart. Now, seeing that Kochu Kanae believes in ghosts so much, it seems that he has seen his own past. He seems to be able to see how sad Kochu Kanae will be when he is deceived by ghosts in the future up. Hamejima Kiyome, like most of the pillars, here, is not willing to believe in a ghost, nor is he willing to form an alliance with the ghost called Mew. It's just that the style Kochu Kanae has been pushing hard, and the master maternity house also agrees, so he didn't express any objection in the end. After all, the master maternity house has the grace to save his life. In fact, almost all the pillars here have great respect and admiration for the Lord Yubayashiki Kagaya. I think you can try to believe in Mew once. It was Yorokodaki Sakanji, the water pillar, who spoke. At this moment, almost the Zu who were present were slightly shocked. They never thought that senior water column Yorokodaki Sakanji would believe in ghosts. You know, in recent years, senior Yorokodaki Sakanji, 13 disciples were killed by ghosts during the trial in Mount Tang. I thought that Yorokodaki Sakanji would hate ghosts, but he didn't expect to believe in a ghost. Lord Yubayashiki Kagaya, supported by 2 children, watched the debate quietly. After a long time, he stretched out his hand weakly. The debate about the ghost, Mew, came to an abrupt end. All the pillars are looking towards the Lord Yubayashiki Kagaya. Once upon a time, Yubayashiki Kagaya, the master, was also a man with a handsome face, but his face was gradually disfigured due to illness, and even his eyes are now blind. Now, I'm afraid I can't even swing the sword 10 times. Is a very weak person, but all the pillars did not despise them, but respected them. Because Yubayashiki Kagaya is a leader with a charismatic temperament and a broad heart. He is a good master, who values his subordinates. He can keep in mind the life experiences of every member of the ghost-slaying squad who died, even if his body is extremely weak and it is difficult to walk. But still visit the graves of the team members who died in the battle every day. I've heard all your opinions and arguments. As Mr. Hamejima Kiyome said, ghosts, after all, are different from us, and they really need to be on guard. However, in the current situation, I am willing to believe that. Mew, Yubayashiki Kagaya said softly, which ended the discussion. Hearing this, Fungju Shinazugawa Sanemi couldn't help clenching his fists. The duty of the Demon Slayer team is to kill ghosts. Even if the chief says like this, I can't accept it. Pillar of Rock, Hamejima Kiyome clasped his hands together. I also expressed my disapproval in a gorgeous manner. I absolutely cannot approve of a ghost, such a thing. The sound column U is attached to drink with Tengen. Leader. Although I respect you from the bottom of my heart, please forgive me for not being able to understand this idea, and I fully oppose it. Current Pillar of Flame, Rengoku Kyojuru attached to drink. Looking at the current situation, the master, Yubayashiki Kagaya frowned, and finally, Yubayashiki Kagaya broke free from the support of the 2 children, stood up, and bent down to the crowd. This is the Demon Slayer team's ability to get close to Kibutsuji Muzan for so many years. It is also the second time in the history of the Demon Slayer team that they have the opportunity to kill Kibutsuji Muzan. Kagaya, don't let this opportunity pass. Please. Help me. Almost a plea. All the pillars were slightly silent. Style, Kochu Kanae was the first to stand out. Next is the water pillar, Yorokodaki Sakanji. I don't believe in that ghost, but I believe in Sister Kanae. Love column, Kanroji Mitsuri opened his mouth and stood up at the same time. At the beginning, everyone didn't believe me. It was Master Product who believed in me and rescued me. I am willing to believe Master once. Rock pillar, Hamejima Kiyome clasped his hands together. One after another, the pillars stood up. Thank you. Yubayashiki Kagaya bent down and bowed.